Okay, I think we're on. Let me run over to YouTube and see. Hello? Is anyone here? Let's see. It looks like, yes, there are people here. Hello, hello, hello. Traveling Wolf and Cecilia, who has a new picture that's super cute. And Doug, who has an old picture that is super cute. How is everybody doing? Hi. Happy, I guess, narcissist. That's such a tongue twister. Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day. Oh, you got your hair done. Okay. Yeah, that it is super cute. Whatever you did, super cute. Mark is here. Hey, Overcoming Understanding is here for like the next 30 minutes or so before she has to go to bed because she's responsible. Yeah, your hair really is super cute. And yes, it really is Narcissistic Awareness, Abuse Awareness Day. That was a thing started by Brie Bonchet. I hope I'm saying her last name right. But yes, Brie Bonchet. She is a psychotherapist and just decided, that why not? This needs a day. And Spartan life coach Richard had said, yeah, let's, just do it. Just make it a thing. And so they just kind of ran with it. So that's how these things start. Tony is here. Let's see, I'm catching up with questions. Mark says, I was just Googling info on my narcissistic ex. Hippie Go Lucky is here and just came back from a bike ride. Good for you. It looks like Cecilia went to the doctor and the doctor was really blunt and yeah, super triggering. Oh, I'm sorry. I hate when that happens. So Mark, you were saying that you were Googling things about narcissism and then I'm assuming that you just stumbled across this channel and that's how you found us. And do you have any questions? So, for those of you, Mark, in particular, that are new to the channel right now, you know, okay, you watched all my videos. This is a weekly live Q&A that I do every single Wednesday night. It goes for about 2.5 or so hours, and we do we do questions, we do answers, we do feedback, we do support. People just share things. The whole so this is your time. You let me know, and it's a total free for all. So I answer questions. People in the chat answer questions. People later on will answer questions in the comments. And let's see. River Song is here. Doug says, Dana, scroll back to see how I am doing. Let's see, Doug, let's scroll back and see how you are doing. He says he saw his neurologist and received some positive test results. That's awesome. And the Pittsburgh versus Sharks hockey game is on. Well, I understand that there are priorities in life, Doug. It's totally okay for you to watch your hockey game and be here in spirit with us. We will understand. And he says, oh, that's so nice. He says, Dana, I think you are a most awesome person. Your videos heal so much. I just can't thank you enough. That is, thank you. Thank you for all of your comments are just so nice and just, You're a very nice human being and a man, and that's just awesome. It's so nice to meet good people, and there's so many good people that are just on this channel, and I love it. And I thank you guys for that. So let me scrolling down. Overcoming Understanding is talking about how she works out a lot. I need to do the same. I have really gotten in this funk, and I have put on probably like a solid 15 pounds since I started my channel, like in the past year. And I think a lot of it, I never really thought I was an emotional eater before, but I think I am. And I think it's just been really stressful trying to figure out everything with the channel, and just a big learning curve to everything. So hold on, my computer, why is it doing what it's doing? Hold on. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're good. Let me scroll down and see what I missed. Cecilia says, Dana's hair has a vintage vibe tonight. I had my hair, it's funny that you mentioned that. I had my hair up earlier, and it was really crazy and curly and doing crazy things. And I'm like, I have like some crazy Cher, like circa 1984 hair going on. So, except hers was better. I have to say, mine just kind of looks crazy. Like I rolled out of bed, and it's maybe not, yeah. So, well, here we are. Cecilia says, I used to eat my feelings as a teenager because of how things were going. I've changed my relationship with food, and I'm glad of it. Yeah, I don't know. I have struggled with food my whole life, and it's so interesting. So like talking about narcissism and like codependency and like all of this stuff, the more I get into it, the more I see other areas of my life kind of like snapping into place. It's really, really weird. So when I was a kid, I probably started putting on weight when I was around 13, and gained, I don't even know. I put on quite a bit of weight, went to a nutritionist for a while. That didn't do anything. And because we all know, like we all really know what to eat, right? It was just emotional eating, and I didn't realize, nobody realized it, I guess. And I was big. I wasn't that big. I was maybe 20, 30 pounds overweight, which is still a lot, but it wasn't, I mean, nowadays that's like normal, but it's, anyways. So I'd put on weight, and then I struggled when I was in high school. I ended up losing a ton of weight and was struggling with bulimia, and I just have had issues with eating and depression and bad relationships and all of this. I didn't realize how interrelated all of this was until fairly recently. So that's been really, really eye-opening. Wow. Sarah says she's just got a handle on her emotional eating. She's lost almost 200 pounds. That is, Overcoming Understanding also says, wow, yeah, that is amazing. Wow, that amazing and impressive and good for you. Like where I'm at in my life, I would like to lose about 20, 25 pounds. And I so often think like, I do not know how people lose 200 pounds. Like that is such a hill to climb. I mean, I guess literally and metaphorically, but like emotionally, it can just be so overwhelming and depressing to even battle 20 pounds. you are my hero for doing over 200. That is just amazing. Just amazing. So yeah, okay, so people are talking about therapy. Cecilia was saying she had a bad experience with the therapist. People are talking about EDMR, and I think we're talking about EFT, like the tapping therapy as well. And, finding a professional in any field, whether it's a therapist or an investment banker or an attorney or a realtor, you name it, finding a good one that you click with and they know what they're doing, they are worth their weight in gold. And it can sometimes take some doing, and there's no shortage of just like incompetent people out there, and there's no shortage of really highly skilled people, but that are total jerks. So, I'm sorry that you had that experience. Sarah, I don't know if YouTube will let you share links here, but you can try. I don't, when people share links, I don't delete them or anything. I'm just not sure that that's a YouTube, that you can do that in the chat, but you can try it. So let me see. Some people had asked some questions. Let me scroll up. Chat. Hold on. Let me stop the chat here. Did I do it? Nope. Why is it doing its thing? Okay, Dawn says, Dana, did narcs target us? I'm with you on the empty buckets, but is there something in addition, or are the empty buckets the everything? I just want this to never happen again. I'm scared. So, I think manipulative people tend to target those of us that come across as nice and understanding. And because nice and understanding people tend to be tolerant, we tend to put up with a lot of things. And we tend to let other people that are pushy and manipulative get their way. So that's part of it. Really, the only way really to narc-proof your life is to understand your empty buckets. So realizing what vulnerabilities were they able to exploit. That is like 75% of it right there. And then knowing the red flags, knowing that a whirlwind romance and things moving quickly, and knowing signs of problematic behavior and the feelings that go along with that. I just did a video this morning that I released on different types of feelings that people feel when they're in a verbally or emotionally or psychologically abusive relationship. If you're feeling those feelings, knowing yourself well enough to realize that means something's off, and being okay with walking away. But a lot of it is just going slow, because everybody puts their best foot forward for like the first at least couple weeks when they're dating somebody. So knowing that people they're gonna do that. They're gonna, I do not look like this. Like when I'm on a date, I do my hair. I look a lot more pulled together. And, this happens after about 3 weeks or a month. Then, if I'm running around outside, I'm not going to put in as much effort. So, but generally people, they put in a lot of effort. They tend to be very likable. They tend to, you're trying to get the other person to like you if you're interested in them. Right. So it takes time to see how people truly are, because anybody can say anything. Right. And so when we're first dating somebody, they can and they will often say exactly what we want to hear. And so it takes practice. It takes going slow and not getting caught up. And again, like kind of knowing yourself well enough to know where did I fall for this? It took me 2 relationships in a span of about 5 years that were both with narcissists, and they both were just crazy to see. And then even then it took me a little while after that. After the second relationship, the first relationship I thought was a fluke. I thought I just got tangled up with this guy. Like statistically speaking, this will probably never happen again. I didn't get it. And then a few years later, I actually dated a problematic guy after that, but it was nothing like Jack and Steve. And then Steve, then that was crazy as well. And then I realized then this can't be a coincidence. Like, what am I missing? How does this keep happening to me? Like, what am I missing? You know? And getting into some support groups and then hearing from other people and then, starting this channel and really doing a lot of the kind of the introspection, realizing I was a sucker for the love bombing, and that's how I was getting roped in. And, I didn't realize that I had that empty bucket, but I did. And so once you realize that, then you can start working towards that. And then it brings it to the front of your mind. If you meet somebody and they start wanting to talk or text or Skype or whatever for hours upon hours every day, even though it might feel good, bells are going to be going off in your mind saying like, this is not how healthy people act. And to take a step back and you have to really be in love with your own life. I mean, that's a big part of it, to where new people are like the icing on the cake. They're not the whole cake. And so when you do meet a new person, you've got hobbies, you've got interests, you've got friends, you're doing things, and you're not going to be so quick to jump into their boat and combine your life with theirs and make them your whole world. So it's, and it's hard to have healthy boundaries and standards if we're lonely. So that's how a lot of these online dating scammers work. That's how emotional manipulators work. Emotional manipulators, they target people based off of what they're looking for as far as supply. So it might be, money or transportation or shelter or sex or kind of, you name it, what they're wanting from whoever they target. But, so anybody can be targeted, I guess is what I'm saying. But they're going to lose interest if you keep your pace, and if you don't get caught up in that whirlwind situation and you realize that you're going to move at the pace that you're comfortable with, and that's not negotiable. Like, this is like, you have boundaries and standards, and you're going to not compromise them for people. And a healthy person would be okay with that. But I totally get being scared, and it's a very valid thing. It's just going to be going slow. Yeah. Okay, Cecilia mentions here about Meetup, saying she joined a weekly bike riding group and she's making tons of friends. It has opened so much up. Meetup.com is a treasure. I completely agree. Like, there's so many groups out there. That is such a great way to meet people. It's not a dating site. You can go there. You're doing things that you love. You're meeting people that also like to do things that you love, and there's no pressure. You can show up looking like this. Like, it's just, you're out there, you're having a good time, and it's fun. Sarah says, love bombing is the worst, but I can catch it now, and I only lose a few days instead of a few months to a toxic relationship. Yes, I agree. That's so key. A lot of it, and this is the thing, it's because it's a whole different way of viewing the world and people and dating and friendships and a lot of things. Because I don't know about you guys, but I know for me, I also had a lot of emotional manipulators as close friends over the years. Well, quote in quotes, close friends. And it took me a while to see that I really had a lot of problematic people in my life in different capacities. So, again, like, once you realize what is problematic behavior, once you spot it, there isn't this confusion. Because I think so many people stay in these relationships, myself included, for so long because we're trying to sort out what is normal, what is problematic, is it us, is it them? like we're lost in the fog and we're trying to figure it out. But once you know, like, this is what this looks like, this is what problematic behavior is, this is what emotional abuse is, this is what gaslighting is. If you start feeling like the video I did today, if you start feeling confused, disoriented, angry, depressed, anxious, fearful, right? All of these different feelings. These feelings are not present in healthy relationships. So again, being in tune with how you feel and knowing, okay, if I start feeling these feelings, that's a signal to me that something's off and I need to like throw this relationship into neutral and take a step back and see exactly what's going on. And I need to see it through a set of, clear vision here and not rose-colored glasses. So let me scroll up and see some more questions here. And Fisher says, "Hi everybody. Hope everyone is having a great week. This is dinner with Dana night." That's cute. I like that. Oh, let's see. Lots of questions. Truth Seeker. Says, anyone have any help for Gold Star Sisters of NPD physical abuse? Memorial Day brings up a lot of anger, huge guilt about anger, and cognitive dissonance in me. I would say any support group, and there's lots of them out there. I would get in there and talk to people. There's, and when I talk about support groups, just kind of for the record, it's some people prefer support groups over therapy. Some people prefer therapy over support groups. I don't think it needs to be an either or thing. I think it can be a both thing. And the benefit of support groups is they go 24/7 generally, especially the online ones. So you can, if you're having these low moments or you're getting triggered and it's late at night, you can hop online and generally there's going to be some people there. So, it's just, there's lots of different tools in the toolkit to heal from all of this and to move forward. And I think online support groups is a big one. Just because, and there's thousands upon thousands of people in those support groups, which is also nice because this way you're not drawing on just kind of my 2 cents, right? You're getting the feedback and input from thousands upon thousands of other people that have been there and done that. And as far as support groups go, I encourage people to, I have the link to mine, but to join a handful of them, because there's a handful of them on Facebook, there's a handful of them just on the internet, and see which groups resonate the best with you, and then go from there. So, because every group is a little bit different, and it's just, this is about you and your healing. Truth Seeker says, my brother heroically lost his life overseas, but physically tormented me as well as psychologically growing up. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to handle. And I would imagine a full range of emotions. And yeah, I would definitely encourage you, if you haven't already started therapy, to consider getting into some therapy and joining a support group as well. So yeah, that's a lot. Namal asks, there's a question I'd like to ask. Could I have picked up some narcissistic traits as well? For example, being trained simply when you're young and you don't know any better. Yes. Oh yes, completely. So a lot of people that tend to find themselves in narcissistic relationships, generally, this isn't their first. It's not a coincidence. It feels like it is. It feels like this just happened, that we crashed into this person and, that it was kind of a fluke thing. But more often than not, and that does happen. I mean, sure, that could happen. But I think more often than not, a lot of people that have been in a relationship with a narcissist tend to have had dealings with narcissists in their family when they were children. So either a parent, like a mother or a father, or a sibling, or a close relative, or some sort of significant adult that in some way significantly shaped them. And because we're children, right, even as adults, if we don't stop to question things, if we're just doing things because that's how things have always been done, or if these are just the behaviors we've always had, then we might be, there's a term for it, it's called fleas. And it's basically, it's bad habits that people pick up like fleas from abusive or toxic situations, and they go through life with this case of fleas. But once you realize, I have some really bad behaviors, like this is not the kind of person that I want to be, then you can work to change them. So the problem with narcissists and with sociopaths isn't necessarily their bad behavior. Because a lot of people have bad behavior. A lot of people lie and cheat and manipulate and steal and do all kinds of things. It's not necessarily the bad behavior that's the problem. It's the fact that they don't see a problem with their problematic behavior. That's the problem. And because they don't see a problem with it, they're not motivated to change it. And their behavior tends to just get worse over time, not better, because they don't care. They don't care who they hurt. And so if you're seeing narcissistic behavior within yourself or problematic behavior within yourself, that's okay. Like, that's okay. It just means that now that you're ready to see it, you're ready to work on it. And if you want to work on it and you sincerely want to change it, then by all means go for it. Because narcissism, like codependency, it's on a spectrum, and there is a range for both of them where it's within the range of just normal behavior. So I like to think of codependency as being more like others oriented, and narcissism being more self-oriented. And it's sort of like the fairy tale with Goldilocks and the three bears, and she sits down to eat the porridge, and one bowl is too hot, and then the next bowl is too cold, and the bowl in the middle is just right. It's sort of like finding your way with this. You don't want to be overly others oriented. You don't want to be overly self oriented, but you need a nice balance between the two in order to get through life and to have healthy boundaries, but still live a life of meaning and fulfillment and giving to other people and getting ahead in life, because you're still thinking about yourself and what's healthy for you. A lot of codependent people struggle with thinking about themselves because they are so others oriented. So even the idea of doing anything for themselves feels really selfish. It feels really uncomfortable and really unhealthy. And so they struggle with having boundaries because it feels mean. So it takes some navigating. And this isn't something that you're probably going to figure out tomorrow, right? But as long as we all have a direction that we know that we want to head in, and we think to ourselves, you know what, this is something that I really want to work on within myself, and these are the steps that I'm going to take, and I'm going to work on it, and I'm going to get this figured out, and I'm going to get it ironed out, then by all means keep moving in that direction. And if you want to change it, then I believe that you really will. So let me scroll up here a little bit. Nick is here. Hi, Nick. And let's see. And Randy Andretti is here. Hello. T Bella V is here. Let's see. Let me scroll up. These questions are a little. Yeah, right. Okay. So Namal says, yes, my mother is a narcissist. I think that's a really common, I think, realization when people either they've known that something was off when they were young, but it's more, I think what it brings to their attention when they're older is when they start dating and they start realizing that either they're dating they have a pattern of problematic partners, or they start realizing that they have a lot of problematic behavior within themselves that they want to work on. And then they start kind of tracing it back, and they're like, you know what? I am doing a lot of things like my mom or like my dad. And I think even, good parents that are not narcissists, it can be like this feeling of, oh, I'm doing things. I think we all kind of pick up on things, right? So we're sort of like, well, I'm doing a lot of the good things that my dad did, or I'm doing a lot of the bad things that my dad did or my mom, right? And we mimic the behavior that we were role modeled when we were kids. Overcoming Understanding says, yeah, I didn't even realize my mother was a narcissist until I went through a narcissistic relationship, and then it became so clear. Yeah, it is. These relationships can be so incredibly eye-opening, and and I think in large part they're so eye-opening because they're so painful, and it just brings so much to the surface that we might not have even realized that needed to be addressed in our life at all. I know for me, I had no idea. I didn't see how it was related to anything else for a really long time. And it wasn't until I was probably about 6 months into this YouTube channel, to be honest. And the more I was going through it, the more I was like, wow, okay, yeah, nope, that's connected too. Just that's connected and that's connected and that's connected. And because especially if we grow up in a lot of dysfunction, that's what we know. That's normal. Right? That's what we know. It's what we grew up with. And so, as a child, you might have looked around and thought, my home life is very different, or maybe not even very different. My home life is just somehow different from other people, but it may not register as problematic as it really is, especially because a lot of people, they only seem to identify dysfunction if there's alcoholism and severe alcoholism at that, right? Severe alcoholism or severe drug use or severe neglect where kids are being locked in the closet or going without food for days on end or things like that. So people can more readily identify like the extremes of abuse and neglect, but it's harder to see if it was more on the mild end. And so then once we kind of realize, oh, okay, well, we weren't being called names, but we were being yelled at, or maybe they weren't even being yelled at, but they were continually being put on the back burner or being let down, or just somehow made to feel like they weren't important, these kinds of things. And realizing all of that, it as an adult, because if that's how we grew up, it just takes time. It's just peeling back those layers and examining our childhood with a fresh set of eyes. So, hold on, let me turn off my ringer there. Okay. There is a really great looking Greek name here, and I'm going to probably not say it correctly. Konstantino Androkinus says, Dana, I'm building a channel similar to yours. That's awesome. Good for you. I think the more we can, more info we can get out there, the better. Jonathan says, I find the hardest part is resisting her when she comes back. We've been back or forth 6 or 7 times since she moved out. For a sugar daddy, and a year and a half ago. The end cycle lasts for about 4 to 8 weeks. So I just did a video the other day called, I think it was in like a tip on healing from narcissistic abuse, like tip number 1. And in that tip is my, what I call for when you miss him or her list. And in that list, to write out in a easy to scan bullet point format, just everything as to why this relationship is toxic for you. So you might put in there, she comes back only when she wants me to pay her rent. She comes back and tells me she loves me, and then I find out that she's really messaging other men on Facebook. She, you know, doesn't like my son. And you're going to put all of this stuff in there. And so when you do feel those moments of nostalgia, because we all feel them, where we gloss over, we minimize the bad behavior, we glorify the good behavior, and we get sucked back in again. We think, well, maybe this time things will be different, because the good times with abusive people tend to feel so good. And the bad times, of course, are so bad. So, and especially because if you're lonely, then we're starved out. And so we're starved out. So we're eating up those memories of the good times. And that's what brings us back. So writing out that list will cut through what's called cognitive dissonance. And that's why we go back. Cognitive dissonance, it's like this fog that settles in where we start justifying their behavior, and we start glossing over the bad and glorifying the good. And that's really problematic. And cognitive dissonance, it sets in like a fog too. It's fast and it's thick, and it can cause a person to get really lost, and it can, it causes accidents and all kinds of things. So if you can not get caught in the fog, and that can take some practice too, but you stand a chance at getting around that. There's a website, I mention this often, called meetup.com, and it's a fantastic website. There's tons of groups out there. I would encourage people, again, join a handful, join like a dozen different groups and see what they have going on, and then get really, really actively involved in them. You'll find if you're getting tangled up with this problematic girlfriend, the more you build a life that you love, the more that you're out there and you're having a good time, and you're associating with other people that you really enjoy, and because there's going to be other women in this group. It can be a great way to meet women. It's not dicey like online dating has become. And plus you're around that opposite sex energy, which can be really healing in and of itself, because it's there, but it's in a safe, comfortable way. It's not, there's not this pressure like online dating. It's just, you're hanging out with other women and other men, and you're having a good time. And I think the more you build up a life that you love, the less you're going to get sucked back in to her and to this dynamic. So I hope that helps. Let's see. Alicia says, this week I felt much better than the last few months, but then I caught the feeling of, it's not okay to be okay. I accept what he has done to me if I just let go. I know this feeling is weird, but is it normal? So you've got the feeling of, it's not okay to be okay. Yeah, okay. I love that you brought this up. I think a lot of people feel this way. And this is why they get stuck, and this is why they stay angry. Because it's this feeling of, if I somehow say that I'm okay with things, or that I'm able to move forward, then I am somehow also saying that what happened to me is okay, or that I'm not affected by it. But that's not the truth, right? So I would encourage you to use the words to describe this to yourself in whatever way that you are comfortable with. So for example, I do not like the word forgiveness. I love the concept. I don't like the word. And I don't like the word because I feel like it's really broken. Because when a lot of people talk about forgiveness, that word has been so misused and misapplied. It's caused a lot of damage. So to me, for example, forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. I think it's foolish to forget what somebody has done to you, right? But the concept behind forgiveness is releasing anger. It's releasing anger towards a person or towards a situation. Easier said than done. But this is, when I talk about the best revenge being a good life, that moving in that direction, moving towards, I know that I need to release anger. I know what happened to me is not okay. It's not fair. It's not right. Right? But it is what it is. And I know that if I continue to have anger in my heart and inside of me, I will be the one that will suffer. I will be the one that is going to become bitter and hateful and angry. And I don't want that. I don't want that. Like I want peace. I want happiness. I want joy. I want healing. I want all of these good things in my life. The only way to move in that direction is to release the anger. It helps to release the anger by channeling the anger into something positive and into something productive. This isn't to say to not feel the way that you feel, right? It isn't to say that it's not okay to feel angry, because it is. But I think you can also kind of set time limits for yourself and say, I feel angry, I feel bitter, I feel however you feel. I feel cheated, I feel resentful, I feel full of rage, I feel the way that I feel. And to just sit with that. And for as long as you're comfortable sitting with it, realizing too, okay, so here's the thing with emotions, right? We tend to think of emotions in terms of good and bad. That we have but I think if we can get rid of the judgment of our emotions, if we can look at our emotions in terms of we have pleasant emotions and then we have unpleasant emotions. Everything in this life, in your life experience, everything really is working on your behalf. I mean that. I really, really sincerely mean that, and I sincerely believe that. Even abusive situations. And how I think it's working in your behalf and on all of our behalves is because every single experience that we encounter it's sort of like, it's the saying, like sometimes we win and sometimes we learn, right? And so these painful situations, these painful emotions are designed to show us this is not for you. This, stay away, right? It's like the hot stove. You touch a stove, you get burned. You learn, don't touch the hot stove. People are the same way. So you've got these people out there that are like hot stoves, and we get close to them, we get burned. And it can take a while because it's not so obvious, right? Like a hot stove, you can see that it's a hot stove. With the problematic person, it's not so easy because you have wolves in sheep's clothing, right? But once you can realize, okay, there's problematic people out here. This is how I feel when I'm with a problematic person or in a problematic situation. I feel some degree of painful emotion. I feel anger, irritation, frustration, fear, depression, anxiety. I'm feeling this range of uncomfortable emotions. These emotions are your friend. They're telling you, hey, Alicia, don't go here. Like, this is not for you. This causes you pain. You are off track. And so if you can interpret your emotions this way and realizing, okay, these uncomfortable emotions are my friend, they're trying to keep me safe, then you can start gravitating more towards what you know feels good, because those are the signals of ding, 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 you're on track, you're on track, you're on track. And the more you start doing that and the more you start getting used to feeling good, the more your life is just going to really start working. And you're going to be living a life of purpose on purpose. And it's just, things are just going to start clicking, and it's amazing. So there are a lot of lessons, hard lessons, painful, really, really painful lessons that come along with abusive relationships. But with anything in life, there's always a gift buried, there's always something buried deep in that. And it's whether or not we can find it. And that takes a certain level of healing and emotional distance to see it. Because when we're out of these relationships, we are so emotionally raw that it's really hard to think that anything good can come out of this. But I'm telling you from personal experience and from other people that I've talked to in support groups, once you're out of it long enough, once you can start kind of reframing your understanding of this and of kind of events in life and realizing that everything is really working for you, there's a lot of healing that can come from that. So, I think for me, it's reframing my understanding of what happened has helped me to release the anger because I was able to give my pain a purpose. I was able to put it towards good use. I was able to use it as, rocket fuel to propel me into a life that I loved. And getting really clear on what does that look like for you? What are the elements? What are the people, the places, the things, the experiences that would make up a life that you love? And then reminding yourself, you know what? These emotions are here because they have a lesson for me. And everything is really working for me. Even though it might not feel like it, it really is. And I'm going to start moving in that direction of those positive feelings, especially those feelings where when you're feeling excited and juiced and that deep sense of knowing of that's what I want to go do, or that's who I want to hang out with. Like you just know, like somebody had mentioned the other day in the support group, a Bible passage. And I'm not Christian. If anything, identify as more of like agnostic with a twist of Buddhist. But I think, it's like anything else. We hold on to what helps, let the rest go. Anyways, he had mentioned this Bible passage that said something along the lines of, God is not the author of confusion. And I think that is so profound because God, or again, kind of whatever your faith is, God is clarity. Light is clarity. Light, the goodness is clarity. It's the darkness, is confusion. And moving towards clarity. And you're only going to have clarity. Generally, it's kind of like driving a car at night. You're only going to see the next 10 feet or so in front of you, but that's all you need to see. So just moving forward in the direction that you know that you need to that you need to head in. And I think the more you do that, the more those feelings of wondering, that feeling of being torn, that it's somehow not okay to be okay, those are going to dissipate because you're going to give your pain a purpose. You're going to start getting your life more on track. And I think in time, you're going to realize that going through this situation, there's a lot of aha moments in it for you, that what you can get out of this is going to help you get on track and stay on track, if that makes sense. So, all right, let me scroll down. Let's see, lots of comments while I was gabbing away. Annie is here. Yes, she says, Truth Seeker says, yes, God is not the author of confusion. That's a good mantra. I agree. And it's so true. It is so profound. So profound. The first sign of problematic behavior and abuse, which is problematic behavior, but the first sign of problematic behavior or a problematic situation is always confusion. If we can just know that is the first sign of that. It's also the first sign of cognitive dissonance. So if we know, like, it's that feeling of, that's odd, or that's weird, and then it'll progress a little bit to, is it them or is it me? When you get to that point where you start wondering who has the problem, then you know that generally it's them. Because because you're confused. And think about people and places and situations you're in where if you're around people that are empowering and healthy and you enjoy being around, you don't feel that way. You don't play detective. You're not trying to sort out, is it them or is it you? You're not trying to figure out what kind of past issues you have. There's none of that. Like, you just know, like, you feel good around them. There isn't that weirdness. And so, but again, that fog can settle in really fast. So it's really important to keep this on our radar of, realizing if we start feeling confusion, that's a great sign. It really is. It's just like when you're driving in a fog and a thick fog sets in, if you can get off the road and just to where you're safe, right? To get off the road and to just quit moving because you can't see what you're doing. You can't see the cars in front of you or the cars behind you or anything. To just get off the road. It's the same. If you're starting to have confusion with anything, with whether or not you should go to college, with whether or not you should start a business, with whether or not you should marry a certain person or be in a relationship, or if you should cross the street if some strange person's behind you, any type of confusion at any point in your life, if you're feeling confused, it's never normal. It's always a sign to take a step back and that further examination is needed. So, okay, Milky Way Galaxy says, why am I so paralyzed with fear? It's like I can't move because of the things I went through with my narcissist father. I'm afraid of what he might do next, therefore making me afraid to do anything. Well, that's, I don't know what all he did in the past. And let me see if I can scroll. Let me see if I can scroll up here. She says, I've been stuck for a while because my narcissist father always does something. Well, okay. And again, I don't know what all he's done in the past, but that's why you're so paralyzed with fear. This is a totally appropriate emotion for an appropriate situation. If you've got a problematic person in your life who has a pattern of doing problematic things, it's reasonable, right? It's reasonable to be concerned about what else this person's going to do. Makes total sense to me. I think it would be strange if you weren't concerned, right? Or that, like, because this is what he does. Like, he causes problems. So, all you can do, this is kind of my default advice for everybody, is at any given time, all any of us can do is to move ourselves to a place where we are safe and sane. So maybe that means, somehow limiting the impact, the negative impact that he can have on your life. Maybe that means, maybe that means texting him instead of calling him. Maybe that means limiting time that you see him. Maybe that means instead of, having him over to your house where you can't easily get him out the door, you go over there and you're only there for 2 hours. Maybe that means that you don't have any contact at all. Maybe that means, only you can can figure out where that line is for you to what you need to do in order to limit the impact, the negative impact that he has on your life. And also a big part of this too is going to be to anticipate. This is like the number one thing that all of us can do in life, really, is to anticipate. So if okay, my dad, I'm just making up examples. If you know that, he normally causes trouble around holidays, and maybe he drinks, he shows up drunk, he starts fights, he's bringing up things from, he's causing trouble. If you know that, then accepting the situation for what it is, realizing this is what he does. So when you accept it for what it is, then you're no longer surprised by it. You're no longer shocked, because it's like, yeah, this is what my father does. And I'm not going to expect it to be any different, because if I do that, I'm setting myself up to fail. It's kind of like Lucy and Charlie Brown with the football, right? So Lucy holds the football and Charlie Brown runs up to kick it and Lucy pulls it away at the very end, right? And so what happens? Charlie Brown lands flat on his back. And then next time he says, okay, Lucy, like, you're really going to hold the football this time, right? And she says, oh, I promise, like, this is going to be so much fun. And so what does he do? He believes her and he runs and he goes and kicks the football and she pulls it away and he falls flat on his back and she laughs and laughs. And this goes on and on and on, right? Because Charlie Brown is not accepting what is. He keeps hoping that maybe this time Lucy will be different. It's the same thing with any type of problematic or abusive or toxic person. So if you know, okay, this is what he normally does, to anticipate that to the best of your abilities, to not let this, if you're going to have contact with him, to not let it ruffle you, and to go as gray rock as possible, which means, remember, going gray rock is, Ross Rosenberg calls it the observe, don't absorb technique. And it's basically where you're becoming as reactive and responsive. Well, mainly reactive. You're becoming as reactive as a gray rock, which is to say, not at all. So you're not, because you're anticipating things, you're not letting this person's bad behavior get to you. You're observing it, okay, but you're not absorbing it. You're not taking it personally. You're not getting tangled up in it. You're not going to try to argue. You're not going to try to do anything. You're just observing it, and you're seeing it kind of like as an outside, neutral, third party to all of this, seeing the ridiculousness for what it is, and then moving yourself very quickly to a place of safety and sanity. So let me scroll down here and see if I answered that. Dawn says, that's a great example, Dana, the Charlie Brown. Yeah. Okay, Milky Way says, I am living in his apartment. The more I try to stay away from him, the worse he gets. She said, I tried gray rock and my father got worse. So, okay, so if you're living under the same roof and you absolutely have to, you can do gray rock in a way, because yes, it depends on how you do it. So if you have to, I forget who mentioned this term a while back and I absolutely loved it. They called it dumb like a fox. But what it is it's just, you're being very clever about how kind of non-reactive you are. So, it's just keeping that emotional distance. Again, anticipating the behavior, but then keeping that emotional distance to where if he starts provoking you, you're seeing it for what it is, and you're making it, and it's so hard to do when you're in it. It really is. It takes a lot of practice, to just stay busy. If you're going to see him in the kitchen, to be on your cell phone, to kind of play the game. If you've got to play the game while you're there, then you need to play the game. And only you know what the game is and kind of what sets him off and whatever. But do what you can to get out of there as quickly as possible. Hippie Go Lucky says, yes, foxes are smart. Yes. And so that was kind of the irony of that statement of dumb like a fox, because the statement's normally clever like a fox, but it was dumb like a fox in that you're kind of playing dumb about your behavior. Like, oh, I didn't know that kind of me not being reactive to you was bothering you, but you're being clever about being dumb, if that makes sense. So just trying really hard to not get baited into anything, just staying extra busy, doing what you can to just avoid the situation as much as possible. And if that, I mean, again, like, you're the one under the same roof. So, and you know him best, doing whatever you need to do in order to stay safe and sane. Maybe that's stroking his ego, right? So maybe that's telling him all of the stuff that he needs to hear. This is a game. This is all a game. View it as a game. This is a game that it's really hard to win. And so all you can do is to make it as do what you need to do to make your situation as peaceful as humanly possible, because you're not dealing with a reasonable, rational human being. You're dealing with somebody who's trying to get power and control over you by any means necessary. So really, like, setting boundaries and, open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication does not work with a manipulative person. If anything, that can make the situation worse, because then you're making yourself more vulnerable trying to actually work towards a solution when their goal is not to work towards a solution. Their goal is to get power and control over you. So that's where we go wrong. And this is what takes us so long to figure out, because we think that other people are like us, right? That we're dealing with another reasonable, rational human being. And if we can just somehow get through to them, if we can have that, if we can just communicate effectively, then we can work towards a solution. But again, they're not working towards a solution. They're working towards getting power and control. So, big difference. Mary says, I think my father is a narcissist, but can't work out what is up with my mom. My mom. She uses emotional blackmail and tries to control. Is it possible she's got more narcissistic from living with a narcissist for 35 years? Yes. Oh, completely. We all tend to become who we're around the most, right? It just kind of rubs off on us. I think there's that saying that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, in a lot of ways, with our hobbies, with our income level, with our education level, with the words we use across the board. So she's been married to a very high conflict, manipulative, abusive person for 35 years, then odds are she's developed her own coping strategies for that, and has probably picked up a lot of his bad behaviors. So if you're with a person who is a narcissist, who does not have open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication, in fact, it's the exact opposite, then she's had to learn to totally change how she communicates in order for that marriage to stay together. Because it doesn't work if you're trying to be open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented. You've got this narcissist who's doing the opposite, which is be closed, dishonest, manipulative, and trying to get power and control over somebody else. Like, she probably learned early on that there is no healthy relationship possible with a narcissist. Like, it's just survival. Okay, Overcoming Understanding is going to bed. Good night, Overcoming Understanding. Have a good week, and we will hopefully see you next week. So, okay, Milky Way is saying, I'm trying to get myself in the position so I can move away. I think that's very, very wise. And, definitely making that a huge priority, because it's, your safety and your sanity matter. They really, really do. Suzanne says, 21 years the narcissist has made me a little crazy. Oh, I'm sure. I mean, the gaslighting, and if that's what you're dealing with, or, just the erosion of identity, the erosion of self-esteem, that really, really messes with the person. So let me scroll back up and see what other... Christy says, ugh, the power and control thing. It's such a heartbreaker. Milky Way says, someone said I have CPTSD or PTSD. It's most likely CPTSD. So that stands for complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It's very common for people that go through an abusive relationship of any kind. And it often does pass with time, but it's kind of where our brain is on hyper alert, because things have been off for a very long time, versus PTSD, where there's a more clear cause and effect, right? So like, let's say, for example, most people think that you can only get PTSD if you've been at war, right? So if a person, a bomb goes off, whenever they hear a loud sound, they drop onto the floor, right? Or certain smells can trigger flashbacks. So I know, like, for example, a lot of Vietnam vets, the smell of marijuana, because I guess they smoked a lot of pot when they were over there. The smell of weed can be a real trigger for a lot of them, or certain songs that were playing at the time for people at war, or certain movie, like nowadays they have movies and stuff like that they're watching during downtime, that if they come back, they can't watch it. It's too much of a trigger. So there's more of a cause and effect, right? So they're kind of in these really extreme situations, and it's, a brief time. It's very easy to pinpoint. Yes, it makes total sense. You were at war. War was the issue. If a person is at war at home, if you're in an abusive situation, or something incredibly traumatic happens, and it could be not just an abusive relationship, but if you witness a terrible car accident, or someone dies. My mother's was it a cousin? I believe it was her cousin. Yes. My mother's, okay, we'll just say, because it's kind of confusing. I have some family members, they lost a son in a really bad motorcycle accident on a certain road. This happened 50 something years ago. To this day, they still will not drive on that road. It's too much of a trigger for them. I get it. That makes sense. But so different people have kind of these PTSD triggers, in these where they're just really triggered by certain things. An abusive relationship is like that as well. So, it does tend to pass the time. This is something that you can work through. I'm doing a series right now on healing from this. A lot of what does help people to heal from CPTSD is reframing their understanding of what happened, because a lot of it is, there's so much confusion that goes on when you're dealing with a problematic person, especially if you've experienced that gaslighting, where at the end of the relationship you might not even know what's going on, like what's real and what you think about anything anymore. It can be very, very disorienting for a person. And so yes, reframing. Like I said, I'm doing a whole video series. I have a relaxation video up right now. The other video I did was on developing a mantra. So a phrase that you tell yourself over and over again. There's a therapy called EFT. It's a tapping therapy that helps to release emotional blocks. There's EMDR, which is a light desensitization therapy. There's cognitive behavioral therapy, which a lot of people find value in. There's dialectical behavioral therapy, which I think is something that should be taught in high school. Frankly, it's fantastic. And again, a lot of this stuff, you can learn a lot about it for free online. There's videos, EFT, like the tapping therapy, which a lot of people have success with, like that day. I mean, within 10 minutes. It's amazing. There's a lot of videos on YouTube that are free that go over how to go about it, cause it's tapping and saying certain phrases at like certain pressure points. Like you're just tapping. It's very, very interesting. Okay. So let me scroll down. Cecilia says, yes, DBT is fabulous. Meditation helps. Miranda says that she watches ocean videos on YouTube. Yes, Peter. Hi, Peter. Peter says, I've been single for a couple years. I am still very fast to fall in love, but now I think what's holding me back is fear of intimacy more than anything. Well, and it may be fear of intimacy. My guess is it's probably, if you have linked up in your mind that intimacy equals pain, then it's probably more the pain that intimacy in the past has caused you, which makes total sense. total sense. So what's concerning about me is the statement of, I'm still very fast to fall in love. That is still very problematic. Okay. So remember, there's, like not to make people hypervigilant out there. There's lots of problematic people in this world. And there's lots of people that are not problematic, but they're also just not right for you. And so it really helps when you know yourself well enough to know what does Peter like? What do I like? What am I looking for in a woman, right? And what are my deal breakers? So, and getting really, really clear on that before you start dating, especially if you are quick to fall in love. And so I would encourage you to watch my video on, I think it's Red Flags of Codependency, video number 1. It talks about love bombing. It talks about empty buckets. It talks about those of us that tend to fall in love very fast. And why that potentially is, and why that can be a big vulnerability, and how that is exploited by emotional manipulators. So I think that video will really help. It's in a playlist. If you go to my YouTube channel, look at videos, then playlists, and then again, the playlist is called Red Flags of Codependency. Watch that video. I think it'll be really eye-opening for you. Because here's the thing, love doesn't cause pain. Right? It's painful people cause pain. But if you can if you can pay attention and learn the warning signs of painful people and problematic people, then when, not if, because they're out there, when you encounter them, you're going to realize, oh, I remember these feelings. I know how it feels when I'm around a painful person. If I'm feeling confusion, if I'm feeling anxiety, if I'm feeling, I have to play detective. If I'm feeling anxious or depressed or fearful or any of these feelings, this is a problematic situation. I don't need to know exactly what's off. I don't need to know, I don't need to stick around to find out. I know how I feel when I'm with a problematic person, and it's okay for me to walk away from this. So knowing that is huge, because a lot of it, I myself included, I was in a very brief relationship for a few weeks with this guy, and it was actually the catalyst to me starting this website, because I was seeing all of these red flag behaviors. And again, at the time, I was like, I can't possibly be tangled up with another crazy guy. What is going on? And so I really thought I must have issues with my past. Because I couldn't tell if he was, this amazing guy, or if he was a total nightmare. And if you can't tell, that's problematic in itself, right? So if you can't tell if this person, if you don't have clarity, like we were talking about earlier, if you don't have clarity, if you're wondering, is this person, this amazing person, or are they, a total nightmare? There's a problem. Odds are they're a total nightmare, because we know when we're around somebody that's healthy and nourishing and enjoyable. Like, we don't have those feelings. We don't doubt ourselves. But I was really doubting the situation. And I had somebody tell me, they said, well, Dana, you've sat through this. How did she put it? You've sat through this movie before. You know how it ends. You don't need to sit in here and watch this whole relationship implode before you leave. Like, you can leave now. And that was really, and that might sound funny, that was really profound for me, because I didn't have any evidence. I didn't have any proof that he was problematic. I just knew how I felt. And so her saying, you've gone down this road before, you know how it feels when something's off. It's okay to leave. It was this big aha moment of, you're right. I know enough to know that something's off, and that's all I need to know. And now I'm going to walk away. And I'm so very glad I did. So Yes. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. He says, yes, I think it's a lot to do with that. Moving too fast, and he's going to watch the video. Okay, great. I highly recommend it. I think it's, yes, wanting to open up and go too deep too fast. So there's about three or so videos in that Red Flags of Codependency series there that I have put up so far. No, I didn't put the other one up yet because I didn't like it. I need to re-record it. Two, there's the one on love bombing, which is the one that I'm wanting you to watch, the first one. The second one is on rushing intimacy. So that's exactly what you're talking about. This is how problematic people operate. They, and this is because to a lot of us, this feels healthy. This feels nourishing. It feels, like I talked about before, it feels like warm maple syrup on the pancakes of our soul. Like it just feels amazing, right? And they move quick. So they're very quick to want to spend all their time with us. They're very quick to, want to have really deep conversations and tell us all about their last relationship and, like everything. But the thing is, though, with an emotional manipulator, because we tend to think people are like us, if we're taking them for face value, they may or may not even be true. I mean, it's really wild. So a lot of times they'll tell you these stories and they'll say, I've never told anybody else this before. I've never felt like this with anybody before. You're so amazing. You're so special, unique, and different, right? And so we're thinking, oh my gosh, I feel the exact same way. Like I feel so good around you. And like I can tell you anything. That they very quickly become like your best friend, like a soulmate. Things move at this whirlwind pace. Within 10 days, they're talking about love and babies and marriage and combining lives and cell phone plans and finances and moving in together and all of that. And here we are thinking this is like something that happens in a movie, right? Like this doesn't really happen in real life. And it's because, this doesn't really happen in real life. Healthy people, nourished people don't move at this pace. And so the video that I'm talking about with love bombing, it points out all of that behavior. It points out how it feels when we're going through that. And the rushing of intimacy too, it also points out how emotional manipulators rush intimacy. So it's not just the wanting to move in right away. They're hinting at love. They're doing a lot of this stuff, but they're also telling deeply personal stories to you like almost right away. And we're thinking that we're bonding with them, but really we're being manipulated because those stories probably aren't true anyhow. So again, the more you educate yourself about emotional manipulators and narcissism and all of this, the more you're going to see it. It's sort of like with scams on Craigslist. Like when Craigslist first came out, people were falling for scams right and left. People, even emails, like people, we were all, remember back in the day, we were all getting emails from like princes in Nigeria that had, $100 million in gold and they had to leave the country. And somehow it's our lucky day. They got our email address. And so they need help, and they're going to give us, they're going to send us $10 million and we just need to pay the customs clearing fee of $10,000. They'll happily reimburse us for our trouble to the tune of like $1 million, right? People were falling for it right and left. It's not that they're stupid. It's that it wasn't a known thing. Like it wasn't a known thing. Like this is a scam, right? So now that we all know better, people aren't getting so caught up in these scams anymore. And we know, okay, you get an email from Nigeria, from a prince in Nigeria, scam, done, next. If you get somebody off of a dating website and they tell you that they're somehow stationed overseas, or they're an engineer and they're overseas, or they're in the military and they're overseas and they're going to be back in 2 weeks, and you again, it's that feeling, it's that confusion of that's really weird. I feel like something's off. that confusion sets in, it's because there's a problem. So now we know, okay, if anybody's claiming to be overseas and that they're going to be back in 2 or 3 weeks, odds are like it's a scam. Just like the same thing with shipping cars, right? If somebody says, I have this amazing car, I'm going to sell you at a third of what it's really worth, and I'm in the military and I'm overseas and you just need to pay the shipping fee. Craigslist now has on their site, like, offers to ship vehicles are like 100% fraudulent. Like, do not do this, because now we know better. It's the same thing with spotting problematic behavior in people off the internet. Like in real life, once we see it, the cool thing is once you see it, and you can't like not see it. But here's the thing. Here's the caveat to all of this is once you see it, once you're awake to it, odds are other people will not be. So you're going to have the added challenge of people telling you, oh, you're being too sensitive, or it's because of your past, or they're going to justify it because they're not awake to it. That's kind of, again, one of the gifts in all of this is you're going ideally to really learn to trust your intuition. You know the signs. The second part of that is learning to trust yourself. If you're confused, if something's off, it's because something's off. We only feel like something's off when something's off. Animals have different instincts, right? Dogs have this amazing sense of smell. They can smell things as humans wouldn't even ever want to smell, right? Different animals can sense when a storm is coming. Dogs oftentimes are a really good judge of character. So different animals have different animal instincts. Human beings also have animal instincts, and we're taught to not pay attention to them, which does us a huge disservice. I don't know why we're not taught to listen to our animal instincts. It's really crazy when you think about it. It's weird. It's weird that we don't teach kids, hey, if you feel like something's off, it's because something's off, right? But instead, we focus more on like specifics. If somebody comes up to you with a puppy or with candy, you don't go near them. Well, that's great. But what if the person that's problematic is your babysitter, or if it's, somebody at church? So we're teaching them more specifics when we should be teaching more generalities of paying attention to how you feel. So, and again, that can be crazy making. You're probably going to feel very hypervigilant. Other people are probably going to be telling you that you're very hypervigilant, and you're going to possibly feel like you're losing your mind all over again, but for a different way, because you're going to, as you go through it, you're going to be like, something's off. There's a lot of red flags here. Dana had these in her videos. I've been discussing them in these different groups, but nobody else seems to see that this is a problem except for me. And people are pushing me and they're telling me, oh, well, nobody's perfect. And, they're making excuses for their behavior. And I'm telling you, like, just, trust your judgment. Just trust your judgment, move slow, and think for yourself. Don't get pushed into anything by anybody else. When we're dating, especially, because that's a big decision. Like, who you're going to marry, who you're going to partner with is one of the biggest decisions that you can make in this life. So, and you have to live with the consequences. So whoever else, if they don't have to live with the consequences, they don't get a vote, as far as I'm concerned. Do what you feel comfortable doing. You know the situation best. You know the person best. You really, really, really do. This is why I also encourage people, if they're in a situation where they're in a toxic relationship, right? Even if the person has never been physically violent, even if they've never called them a bad name, even if they've never done anything intimidating before, if you feel like you're in danger, it's probably because you're in danger. So again, and other people may not see it, right? So police or friends or family might think like, Well, come on, like they haven't done anything, or well, or if they did do something, well, they only put a letter on your windshield, or they just put a rose on by your front door, or look how sorry they are, right? But in your mind, if that fills you with fear and terror, there's a reason for that. And go with your gut. Go with your gut. Go with your gut all the time. All the time. You're not going to be sorry. Okay. Let me scroll down and see some questions here. Alicia says, children shouldn't watch too many fairy tales. The charming prince turns out to be the con artist and the guy who love bombs you in real life. Yeah. So here's something interesting too, right? Well, actually, okay, before I get into that, Lisa has said, yeah, all the animals left the coastline before the giant tsunami in 2005. And yeah, Mark said, yep, my gut told me my ex was cheating on me. It's weird how we know. Isn't it? Like, you know. I really, the more I get into doing all of this with this website and everything, the more I feel like my role in this is to just validate people, because you have all of the answers that you need. You have all of the answers that you are seeking. Pay attention to how you feel. That's it. Like, if you take nothing away, if that's the only thing that you take away from all of my 200 and something videos, it's that. It's go with how you feel. Move towards what gives you clarity. Move away from what gives you confusion. Life is really that simple. And you will know, and it's crazy, right? Like, you think about it. Think about different jobs you've had. Think about relationships you've had. Think about things you studied in school. Think about cars you've bought. Think about houses you've bought. I look back on my life, every single situation that did not work out, I knew, I knew going into it, I don't think this house is a good idea. I don't think, there's something not great about that car or that job, or I was lukewarm about, my first degree was in English. I was lukewarm about doing that, so like if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no, really. If it doesn't totally juice you, if you don't feel, ideally moving to something that gives you you have so much clarity, you have so much certainty that deep in your bones, like, this is what I'm doing. That's the level of certainty that you want. And if you're kind of feeling lukewarm about a person that you're dating, if you're feeling lukewarm about a job situation or a house or a car or in an investment, anything, then that's a sign to just slow down, because those situations tend to fizzle out. They really, really do. They're not what we're meant to be doing. It's that feeling of absolute certainty, that clarity. And sometimes and the hard thing with that is those situations, we tend to have to wait a little bit longer before we feel that level of, yes, that's it. And it can be easy to give up hope or give up, to get impatient, because we want a partner, we want a house, we want these things. But if it's not, I talk about kind of getting in tune with your own emotional scale a lot, right? So and doing it in ways where there's not a huge emotional investment. So I think it was last week I gave the example of my couch pillows, right? So on an emotional scale of 0 to 10, 10 being a yes, like absolute certainty, yes, juices me, it excites me, I love that. 5 being meh, kind of lukewarm, mediocre. 0 being ice cold, like get out. So looking around, and I encourage you guys to do this, like look around stuff that you're not emotionally invested in. These pillows for me, like, and this is obviously not an exact science, but these pillows are like a 9 or a 10. Like I really, really like them. I really like them. Really like them. This little bird of peace, I really like that little guy. That's a 9 or a 10. I really like this glass. These 9 or 10, maybe probably a 10. I really like these. Okay, here, like this lip balm, this is maybe like a 7. Because here's the thing, if you have things in your life too that are not a 9 or a 10, it's going to cost you more time and more money and more energy down the road. Because again, like for example, because I'm not really wild about this lip balm, I have probably bought multiple other lip balms trying because I don't like this one. Like it's not my go-to lip balm. Does that make sense? It's the same way with a career or with a car or with a partner that you're trying to date or with a friendship or whatever. If you're just kind of like lukewarm, it's that immediate gratification, but it's not long lasting. Your odds are you're going to then, as soon as you have, like if you buy a car, and that car is like meh, it's okay. It's just it's transportation, right? If it doesn't really, and sometimes, and I'm not saying that you got to get like a brand, like a super expensive car, but like if it's where that sweet spot is, where that's like a 9 or a 10 for you. And if it's not a 9 or a 10, then odds are you're going to end up selling it, or it's somehow it's not going to work out, and you're going to have to get another car in the next few years. It's weird how it works out like that, but it really does. So, okay, that was off topic. Back to children should not watch too many fairy tales because the Prince Charming normally is the guy that love bombs you in real life and is highly problematic. Yes, somebody had mentioned in the support group the other day I had made a comment about the movie The Princess Bride, which is one of top 5-ish all-time favorite movies. I love that movie. Love, love, love that movie. And in one of my videos, I had made the comment that problematic behavior, it's like that scene in The Princess Bride where they are walking through the fire swamps. I don't know if you guys remember the movie, but Princess Buttercup, they're walking through and they hear this like doo, 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 and then this flame shoots up and it catches her dress on fire. Okay, and so Wesley quickly puts out the fire, and so now they're all on high alert, right? And they're walking through the fire swamp, and he hears it again. He hears the June, 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 and this time he picks her up and he moves her over, and this flame shoots up, and he learned, and he tells her, we're good. Like we can survive in the fire swamp. We know what goes on here. The fire swamps, there's this popping sound like 3 times, then there's a flame. It's the same thing with problematic behavior. It's the confusion, it's the introspection, and it's the how did I say? Confusion. I think confusion, introspection, justification. And then boom, problematic behavior comes up. But anyways, so we were talking about The Princess Bride, and somebody had said that her ex, who was a narcissist, loved that movie and was continually talking about it and quoting it and everything, and how he loved a lot of romantic comedies. And then this whole conversation ensued about... Hold on, let me stop the chat. Lauren has a question. Lauren, go ahead and type your question, and I'm going to finish my story, and then I'll get your question. She was wanting to know why her ex was so interested in romantic comedies, and what was interesting. There was a couple things interesting about that. So my guess would be is a lot of narcissists, and that's actually one of the criteria in the DSM, is that they have this preoccupation with these ideal love. And the movie The Princess Bride is all about ideal love. And I think it's because and their actions, they're so grandiose, they're so over the top, right? Like they're the love bombing, the apologies are often there's it's like something out of a movie. And I think it's because they don't have normal human emotions, right? They don't have that connection. So I think they're learning a lot of this human behavior from movies. It's so strange. And so yeah, it was really weird. And I had totally forgotten about this until she had mentioned that. When I first began dating Jack, I was fresh out of a divorce. I should not have been dating anybody, but that's how these things happen. Like you're vulnerable, you don't realize you're vulnerable, and then you get tangled up with all kinds of the wrong people. And right away, Jack had told me that he loved me within like the first week we were together. And again, I remember thinking, you are too old to be acting this way. Like you're a man, like you're in your 40s and you're acting like you're 14. Like this is ridiculous. And so I told him, I said, I'm a million miles away from ready to be in love or even date seriously. Like I just got out of a divorce. Like I probably shouldn't even be seeing you. Like I need time to just figure myself out. Well, he knew that I loved the movie The Princess Bride. I had mentioned that before. And so he would do things because, Wesley in the movie would always say, as you wish. That was his code for saying, I love you. Jack would always tell me, as you wish. Anything that I would say. And it was so, of course, so at the time, so romantic and, so over the top and so sweet and, sappy and all of it. But I had forgotten that until we were talking about the scene in the movie and just all these different things that the way they lure you in. And of course, the reality is the whole time he had this whole double life and, had been sleeping with dozens, if not hundreds of people the whole time we were together and was only after me because he thought I was going to get this huge divorce settlement, which, I didn't. Which actually, the funny thing is that probably saved my life. The fact that I walked away from pretty much everything and crazy. So Lauren, yes, what is your question? Let me scroll down here. And Namal says, go with your gut, shout it out. It says, oh wait, let me see if I missed part of it. Okay, Lauren says, so why after cheating, lying, name-calling, drug abuse, I still find myself thinking of him nearly every day. I'm starting to feel as though I'm unhealthy, abnormal, even obsessed. I told him that I didn't wish to remain friends and we have had no contact since, but I still find myself thinking a lot. I understand that there's no clear-cut answer, but I just feel very unusual and very strange. So yes, a lot of these relationships. So if we're feeling starved out in some area, right? If we have this empty bucket or a low bucket, and again, I use the example in my life where I was walking around with the low bucket of, I'd felt very unimportant and unloved for a very long time. I did not realize this. Okay. So that those feelings were magnified, especially after my divorce. So when Jack came along and like I just said, like here he is telling me, oh, as you wish. And he's being so over the top and it's just that he's making me feel so important and so loved and so appreciated. And he's just everything I could have ever wanted in a man. I was just drinking that up because eating it up. I was so starved out, right? And I didn't see it as problematic. I felt it, but I didn't acknowledge it. And so oftentimes in these relationships, they manufacture these emotions, right? So the highs are really high, the lows are really low. Desert Flower's talking about trauma bonding. Yes. And Desert Flower also mentions, he will hoover you, fortify the gates. Yes, yes, yes. So preparing yourself, always, always, always. emotional manipulators, they tend to do what's called hoovering, which is kind of, they circle around and then they will come back with these false promises of, flowery over the top things and future faking, and it's this everything you want to hear, and talking about if they've never felt this way about anybody before, and a family, and you're the one for them, and they'll do anything to make this work, and blah blah blah. And it's so easy to get sucked into that. So keeping your emotional guard up forever, because they can circle around a month, a year, 10 years, 50 years later. They often do come back. Don't let this rattle you. Don't let it derail you. Just anticipate it. So if and when it does happen, you're like, oh, I was not expecting that, but I was expecting that. So you're not getting sucked into it again. You're like, okay, that's a Hoover. I'm not falling for it again. And yeah, so it's, you feel this level of intensity. My guess is because everything that we do, everything that we feel generally it's filling some sort of need. So if he was filling this need in your life, if he was making, because generally the sex is amazing, the connection is amazing. It feels like we've really met our soulmate. And so when you're feeling this level of connection, you're talking, love is the strongest human bond there is. So if we're bonding to this person, not just a person, but somebody that we think is our soulmate, that bond is deep, and it's chemical too. So there's a lot of like oxytocin and dopamine and all these chemicals that are going on that are cementing this bond. And when it's hard for for a bond to break. And so for them, it's all smoke and mirrors. None of it's real. But for us, it's very real. So we were buying into the romance and the promises and all of it. And so we're still hooked in. And so, it's this whole like intermittent reinforcement thing that goes on, where if things, they get out of our life and then we don't hear from them, right? We become crazy, we become obsessive, we become where we're checking our phone, where we're stalking them on social media. We've never been like this before. And then we finally hear from them and it's like this sense of relief, right? Like, oh, okay, like, whew, that was okay, we're going to be okay. And they're still in my life. And it's, they manufacture this crazy neediness in people. They give you everything that you want and then they pull it away. So it's just these ups and downs, So yeah, it's just super, super intense kind of situations. She says, I would shake and feel very anxious when he would contact me. When we last spoke, he told me he had been binging on cocaine. And yes, I had just lost my father and moved to a new country at the time. So a lot of that just, they feel you're incredibly vulnerable, right? And thank you, Cecilia, for laying down the band hammer. But yeah, and that's the thing too with vulnerabilities. Oftentimes we don't realize that we have them, but of course, it's easier to see in other people, right? Everything is like, everything is easier to see in other people, especially problematic behavior. But there's been a handful of movies where people have done, like, they have done crazy things. Like they get divorced, and then they go buy a zoo. Right? Like that's a true story. Or like Eat, Pray, Love. Like she gets divorced and then decides to try to go find herself. And part of it, she goes to, Bali, where she'd met this, spiritual teacher who had said one sentence to her, and she's like, okay, you're floating adrift when you're vulnerable and you don't even realize it. This is why people say, they're like, if you get any traumatic major event, like if it's a death of any kind, or a death or a divorce, do nothing for a year. There is so much wisdom in that. But the problem is when we go through something like that, we do the exact opposite. And that's why they tell us to not do anything for a year because people do the exact opposite. But this is why it's so important to just time out, just throw your life in neutral and just be and just chill, because you're not thinking straight, but you think you are. And it's so true. And oftentimes it's not even that we think we're thinking straight. We think we have massive amounts of clarity. We're like, you know what? I'm getting a divorce and I'm buying a zoo. And that somehow seems like the best idea ever. Especially after a divorce. People just think that I did that. So many crazy things like that I have almost gotten myself into. But my plan, Jack and I had talked about building these like off the grid cabins, and we were just gonna rush in and go do this. And I was gonna somehow, I had amazing credit at the time, was gonna finance all of this whole project, and we were gonna, and he had major red flags about him, but I wasn't seeing him. I was incredibly vulnerable and very impulsive. And this is what happens when we're recovering from some sort of trauma. So, assessing yourself for your vulnerabilities is really, really important. So, hey, Adrian's here. Adrian, I can see your comments. This is the first one I've seen though. So Doug is making a Star Trek reference. Lisa says, yeah, buying a zoo. She says, LOL, yup, I went a little crazy after my last trauma. Lauren says, I practiced Buddhism after the breakup. Thank you again for the support. I really appreciate it. Yeah, there's a gal, Mindy, I mentioned her before. Her channel is she's on YouTube, called The Enthusiastic Buddhist. And even if you're not Buddhist, even if you're just interested in learning about meditation or being in the moment, or there's a lot there. Honestly, like, to me, Buddhism is a philosophy. It's not necessarily a religion. There's a lot that's awesome about it. And she's really cool. Like, her channel is, I don't know her, but I guess I feel like I do know her, because I feel like I know people when I watch them all the time on YouTube, but I don't know her. But she's amazing. Like, she's super mellow. She's super chill. She just does a really great job at explaining. I think she's a Buddhist nun, actually. Does a really great job at explaining different Buddhist concepts, and very, very interesting. Her channel is called The Enthusiastic Buddhist. I highly recommend it. She's one of the best Buddhist teachers I've ever come across. So T. Bellavi says, yeah, I wish I was a Vulcan with no feelings right now. LOL. Yeah, it's hard because these relationships are just super emotionally charged. A great book, too. It's the book that we're reading this month for our book club on my website, which, by the way, has been hacked right now. And I am hopefully, my hosting company is in the process of getting it fixed. So if you just go to thriveafterabuse.com, you should be fine and not get the hacked version of the site. But thriveafterabuse.com, and there's a site on there that says tab says book club, and I have all the different books we've been reading, and then I take like extensive notes on them, and I post my notes every month on them. So the last month for May, we read The Power of Now, which is one of my all-time favorite books. It's heavy reading, but it's worth it. This month, we're reading Psychopath Free. If you have not read this book, I love this book. It is amazing. It'll give you a lot of aha moments and insights. I really think that it's probably where a lot of the terminology, I'm guessing, comes from. I don't quite know, but I think a lot of the talk and support groups comes from Psychopath Free. They just redid the book. I have the latest version of it. I read the original one several years ago. So I don't remember like comparing and contrasting, but the new one is fantastic as well. And the author really, Jackson Mackenzie, I believe is the author. Psychopath Free is the book. And I will put it down in my description after the chat is over, if you don't remember it. Yeah, go ahead and ask another question, Lauren, if you want. But it's a really engaging book. The author talks a lot about the manufactured emotions, and I think it's a he, Jackson Mackenzie Jackson. I don't remember. It's a cool name. I just don't remember which way it goes. If it's Mackenzie Jackson or Jackson Mackenzie. Talks, just totally nails it. Like just totally nails the emotional roller coaster of how they're able to manufacture these emotions and like how we feel during it. It's, I mean, spot on. Really, really, really great book. So if you would like to read the book, again, it's called Psychopath Free. We'll be discussing it in book club, which is on my support group on my website. So if you go to thriveafterabuse.com and then go to the tab that says support group, you'll be able to see book club, and then you can go back and read you can read the other books if you would like, or you can read my notes on them. So I tend to take, like I said, very extensive notes, generally between like 7 to 10 pages of notes on each book. I cover the high points. I'd like to get this channel, I'd like to get organized is really what it is. Get organized enough and get time to where I can start interviewing some of these authors, because they have a lot of really great points. So Jackson Mackenzie. Okay, thank you, Candy. Marie says there are a lot of narcissists in religion. Yes, there totally are. I would even say even in like spirituality. I think any dynamic, and I don't know if it was Buddha. I think it was Buddha who had made the comment, if you meet a Buddha, a person claiming to be a Buddha on the road, kill them. I don't think he meant that literally, but I think what he meant was anybody that's claiming to be a spiritual teacher is not a spiritual teacher. That if you're claiming to be enlightened, then you are not enlightened, because you're still operating from a place of ego. You're still operating from a place of, I am here and you are here. There's still this divide of, ego. So Adrian says, I cannot see what I write. Maybe I've been blocked and ignored. No. I can see what you're writing. I don't know why you can't see it. That's really strange. Okay, Marie says, my ex-narcissist fiance told me he was an archangel, Michael, incarnate, and he thought he looked like Jesus's twin. That is a perfect example of the grandiosity of a narcissist. And so a lot of them will talk in will say things like that. They think that they are the reincarnation of Cleopatra, or that they are, it's grandiose like that they could have been Jesus, or that they are Jesus, or that they're an archangel, that they're somehow this, special, unique, and different, that they're these high status, high orientation type people, and that they should only associate with other high level people. So that in itself is very problematic behavior. Marie says, you shouldn't always give people the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. I'm a big fan of, it's the whole kind of trust but verify. Like, I tend to take people at face value until I feel confused. If it's that feeling of, that's kind of weird, so you've I'm also a psychiatric nurse, so I work. A lot of my patients, all of my patients actually, are either mentally ill and or personality disordered. So this is the kind of stuff that I assess, work with day in and day out. So it's, you listen to people and you have conversations, but then if you hear something like that, that's off, right? And even when I'm outside of work, but especially when I'm at work, if you hear something like that's off, they're like, oh, that's not normal. Like there's something going on there. So BBR says, yeah, he could be schizophrenic and he could be delusional. It's not normal. There's something more going on there. So there could be mental illness. There could be personality disorder. It could be an electrolyte imbalance. It could be swelling in the brain. There's lots of different reasons as to what causes, grandiosity, or what causes irrational thinking or delusional thinking. But at the end of the day, it's not normal. And, it also kind of speaks volumes about if that's a person's thought process and they're openly sharing this, then the fact that they think that that's somehow, normal is also kind of interesting and a little bit problematic. So Marie says, this was years ago. I took him to a psychologist. They said he was a borderline personality disorder and a narcissist. And he might. A lot of them have, they have that grandiosity. You look at Hitler, you look at Stalin, you look at Saddam Hussein. When people are creating giant statues out of themselves, for themselves, right? Or, Kim Jong-il, or, there's some stuff in this country with politics that's going on. When it's the ego, like to an extreme, it's really, really wild behavior to see. Lisa says, I'm paranoid now. I trust no one. Everyone is a suspect. I don't even believe the weatherman on TV. It sucks that I'm so distrustful right now. The narc did a number on the trust thing for me. Let me talk about that for a little bit. T Bella V, can you copy and then repost your question? Because it's easy for me to get lost in the chat because I have to stop it because I can't read and think at the same time. So I will look for it here in a second. I wanted to touch on this, Lisa, because I was thinking about this the other day, and just kind of I had not made the connection until just the other day about that level of paranoia. After my relationship with Jack ended, I had known for a while that I wanted to move to Michigan. This is where I live in Michigan now, and my mom and I went on a road trip out here, and I had this again, like people do crazy things, right? So I had this feeling, I'm like, I really want to move to Michigan. I had written out a list of what I was looking for. And I felt, I knew, like deep in my bones, this place exists and I need to go find it. That's where I belong. I knew. And so we were driving all over Michigan and looking for this place. Okay. And, we actually ended up getting lost, stopped in this town that I now live in. We stopped here for lunch. And at this point, I was asking people, this is my list. Like, where should I go? Because we burned through all the places that we were originally driving. We burned through them in like the first 3 days. I was so depressed. It was that realization of, oh my gosh, what if this place doesn't exist? It just exists in my mind. And like, what if I'm wrong? It was really, really heartbreaking. But the waitress had said, she said, you know what? Everything that you want on your list is right here. And I think you're really drive around. I think you're going to fall in love with it here. And we did. And also interestingly enough, it was the only place, that waitress was the only person on our whole road trip through Michigan that said that she absolutely loved where she lived and recommended that we live here. Everybody else had said, go to Traverse City, go to Saugatuck, go to the UP. They had recommended all of these other places. And she was the only one that was like, it's here. And she was right. But anyways, one of the stops along our road trip was my mom. My mother is very cheap. She's very frugal. Okay. And I appreciate the fact that she chipped in as much as she did for the trip. That was amazing. So don't get me wrong, but it scares me sometimes how frugal she can be. So she had booked us this motel. It was really a sketchy motel. And we were walking down the hallway and there were these two really sketchy guys in the motel, and they had, were kind of talking to themselves and, kind of whistled and like were looking back and ogling us. And it was really unsettling. Well, we get to our room. We're, settled in for the night. And in the middle of the night at like midnight, we hear this banging on the door. Like, how cops bang on the door? It was like that. And I was absolutely terrified, like hysterically terrified. And the banging went away. Then I thought, you know what? I'm going to call the front desk. And I went to go to get the phone, and the phone, there was something wrong with it. Like the plug wouldn't fit into the wall. And then I totally lost it. I think I scared my mother because I was very quickly becoming completely irrational. And I was feeling like we had been set up. I was feeling like we were going to get raped or killed. I was moving furniture that was not bolted down in front of the door. I had a whole plan. I was like, if somebody comes back, because we were on the ground floor, I'm like, we need to go through that window. We need to go around at the car. I could not be calmed down. I was hysterical. And my mother did not even know what to do. She's like, Dana, what are you, it's okay. Like they went away. And I'm like, no, and I was so upset. I was screaming at her. I was cussing. I don't normally cuss and scream at my mother. I was really, really upset. I realized just the other day that I think and everything was fine. The next morning we left, and I told her, I said, never again are we staying in a motel. Because again, we knew that moment we saw those guys in the hallway, that this hotel it's gross. It's not just them. Like the hotel was run down. It was gross. It was not safe. It was not sanitary. I told her, I said, I'm never staying in a place like that again. And it's not that I'm even high maintenance, but I'm not staying in a place that I don't feel safe and sane, period. Right. I realized the other day that my reaction to that was part of that CPTSD, because with Jack, because this was all fresh after this was like a few weeks after that whole thing had happened. I didn't know who to trust. And I was also feeling very hypervigilant. I did not trust my family. I did not trust my friends. I did not know who had an agenda. I felt like I was losing my mind. And people, like friends and family, they had never done anything to me. But my situation with Jack was that whole dynamic. I thought he was one of my best friends. I thought he was my soulmate. I thought we were going to get married. I thought we were going to have this business together. I thought I loved my life. Like I thought we were going to have this amazing life together. Then I find out he'd had this whole double life, that not only did he not love me, he didn't even like me. And I think there's a very solid chance that he was actually trying to I think he was trying to poison me. And I think he was trying to kill me. So trying to make sense of all that and trying to figure out, is that nuts? Like, is that nuts for me to think that he's was trying to poison me? Like, I don't know. I don't think now I don't think it was nuts at all. Because I found a drawing, I think I've shown you guys before, where he had sketched out a picture of me sitting on the couch reading, and then up in the corner there was a drawing of a snake that had swallowed a person, and in the shadow of the snake was a heart. So I don't think I was nuts for thinking that, because it's weird that my mind would, and of course I was having, for like the last 6 months of our relationship, I didn't feel good. So I don't know for sure what he was or wasn't up to, but everything else was a lie. Everything else was a plan. I had spoken to his ex-wife. They were married for like 3 months, and she told me she found out about his double life and all of the craziness. She told me, she's like, honey, he is not who he claims to be. If I were you, I would run. Get out of there. Don't look back. And I took her advice. So what you're talking about, the paranoia, the trusting no one, that everyone is a suspect, even the weatherman on TV, I can totally relate to that. Okay. That does tend to pass. And I think the reason this happens to people, I think the reason it's happening to you, and I think the reason it happened to me is it's our brain has to link up. It's continually scanning our environment, right? Trying to process what is it that we're seeing? What can we do with what we're seeing? Is it going to kill us? Like, that's the first filter we come across something, right? Is this going to kill us? And then or put us in danger. If yes, then it triggers that fight or flight mechanism, right? And then we have anxiety and we have all these chemicals going off in our body, and adrenaline and all these things, and then we try to get out of there. The problem is, when in an abusive relationship, it's not like seeing a tiger, right? It's not that instant recognition of danger that can hurt me. Because in an abusive relationship, it's that subtle wearing away of sanity, and it's, you don't, like in my situation, you don't know what's real. Like, I didn't have a lot of like the outright abuse that a lot of people go through. I didn't have the name calling. I had the exact opposite. He was Prince Charming the whole time, until I found out it was all a giant lie. And I have no idea. I think that he was trying to poison me, but I don't know for sure like what the end of that plan was. That messed with my head at a very, very deep core level. So, but I felt like I was losing my mind. I couldn't figure out why I was losing my mind. And hindsight being what it is, I think it was because I'm like pretty sure it was because I couldn't identify what in that relationship was problematic, like what to stay away from, because he wasn't overtly abusive. He wasn't mean or threatening or menacing. He didn't call me names and put me down. There was no physical intimidation there. My brain could not link up what I was feeling like I was in danger. Like, why was I feeling like I was in danger? But I still had all of that adrenaline and all of, the epinephrine and all of that stuff that's running through my body. Those flight or fight chemicals that are coursing through your veins are still there. But it took me a while to figure it out. The solution to that, what helps with that, is getting to a place, and this takes time, of trusting your judgment. That is the solution to that. So once you know how to keep yourself safe, those feelings of paranoia, they go away. Because it's your brain on overdrive trying to link up cause and effect. How did I get here? How am I in danger? Because it's emotional pain, right? So our brain normally tries to keep us away from physical pain. In an abusive relationship, it's emotional pain. And sometimes it can also be physical pain as well, right? But it's trying to keep us safe. And here's where a lot of people go wrong. Because our brain is trying to link up cause and effect, it's very common that people will link up the wrong cause to it. So for example, and I see this, and I did this too, but people will say things like, well, I'm never going to date an entrepreneur again, because they're linking up what was different about this person. Or I'm never going to date an attorney again. Or I'm never going to date a Latin man again. Or I'm never going to date a redhead again. So they're linking, or I'm never going to date a Catholic again, right? So they're linking up incorrect cause to effect, but they don't realize it. This is why I harp on the problematic behavior is the problem, right? Like I talked about earlier, it's not the candy, it's not the puppy, it's not the fact that this person's Catholic or, Latin or a redhead or all of these things. Like those are too specific. It's the generalities of problematic behavior that's problematic. That's what we need to focus on, because if we don't connect the right thing, the right cause to the right effect, we're going to keep finding ourselves getting tangled up with problematic people, and we're not going to understand why. So again, in my situation, after my relationship with Jack, I dated somebody else that was problematic as well, but nothing as bad as the situation, the craziness that ended up being that situation. It wasn't a good relationship for me to be in. It kind of was what it was. The next guy, Steve. I had the night terrors kick up again. I had feelings that something were off. I couldn't shake it. I was wondering, is it him or is it me? Do I have issues with men or with commitment, or what is wrong? And because I didn't trust my judgment, I was asking other people for validation. I was asking friends, and everybody was like, we love him. We love you. You guys are the most amazing couple. And and of course that ended up in another crazy, it's the same. Like, he was still married. And I mean, it was just like craziness and nonsense all over again. The big lesson for me in that relationship was I needed to trust my judgment. I knew that something was off early on, and I didn't trust my judgment. So once you learn to really, and it takes time, and I would encourage you to start small by paying attention to how you feel, right? Move towards clarity at all times. If you have confusion, it's a sign that something's off. Always. Okay? So you're feeling paranoid right now. Try to slow it down. Try to examine it. What do you have move towards clarity. What do you have clarity about? And it can be, and start small. Start with things that you're not emotionally invested in. If people in general are throwing you off, I get it, because I was there too. Even if it's not rational, like the weatherman on TV, don't start with people. Start with something else. What do you have clarity about? I have clarity. I like these couch pillows. Doing things that ground you. I have clarity that I like to grow tomatoes. I have clarity that I enjoy spending time with my dog. I have clarity about XYZ. Getting in touch with what do you have clarity about and what do you have confusion about. So if you are experiencing confusion about people, to sit with that. So if you're in, maybe sit at a coffee shop and watch people go by and ask yourself, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about it? Because you don't know these people, right? How are you feeling about them? Are you feeling tense or confused, or do you feel like that this is somebody that you could trust, or what is the vibe that you're getting? And then ask yourself why, and releasing judgment from it, right? Because you're probably going to feel very judgmental by judging strangers, right? But it's amazing when that emotional attachment's not there, when you're able to say, you know what, I'm feeling kind of tense or uncomfortable around this person because they don't smile, or I'm feeling tense and uncomfortable because this person smiles a lot and they're on a date, and so maybe they're nervous, or this guy, I don't like the way that he talks to his child. Or do you see what I'm saying? So you're going to be, the more that you're doing this, the more you're going to be pinpointing why. Why do you feel this way? And you're going to be getting clarity on why you feel that way. So I hope that helps. I'll be curious to see over time how that works for you. So Lauren, okay, is headed to bed, and good night. And I think you had a question. Oh, she said, I ran into a typical textbook narcissist after the ex, and it's thanks to you, Dana, that I could see it unfold. And Marie said, my female narcissist friend followed all of the red flags, but I didn't recognize it at the time. Yeah. T. Bellavi, great point, says, And people do it with names, which isn't true. So my ex-narcissist and my dad have the same first name. They are total opposite. My dad is the most caring person. Right. That's very common. So they might say like, well, like I don't want to date, there's something wrong with this name, or an astrological sign. They might say, well, I'm never dating a guy named Steve again, or I'm never dating a Scorpio again, or I'm never, you see, people link up the incorrect cause with the incorrect effect, and there's massive consequences for doing that because they're not learning the right lessons. It's not their fault. It's the way the human brain is wired. Our brain is wired to examine what is different about this situation than in previous situations. But because in an abusive relationship, if we're not familiar with the red flags, we don't know. And so our brain is scrambling, trying to make connections that generally are not there. Like, it's because he's a Scorpio that makes him problematic. It's because he's Catholic that makes him problematic, or Latin, or a redhead, or a Leo, or, or whatever. And that's not it. It's the problematic behavior that makes a person problematic. So yeah, Cecilia says the thing they have in common is the narcissism. Their personalities are unique to them. Yep. And, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Mark says, female narcissists are rarer than men or just less noticeable. I think female narcissists, that's a great question. I think it's more socially acceptable, I guess, for women to be crazy and difficult and high maintenance and grandiose. And I think a lot of them tend to get diagnosed if they do go in to get diagnosed. Well, here's a couple things. I think if women go in to a psychologist or a psychiatrist to get diagnosed, they generally are not diagnosed with narcissism. It's generally, from what I have seen, it's generally borderline personality disorder, or every now and again histrionic personality disorder. But I haven't come across many women being, if any, even really being diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. I think there's probably a couple of different reasons for this. If you kind of look at Greek mythology, right? Narcissus is a man. So the personality disorder is named after a disorder that this mythological character had. Even though the name is just the disorder, I think on a certain level, it's kind of this subconscious implication that this is something that men have. So I don't think that a lot of women get diagnosed with it kind of in part for that reason. And in part, when people tend to get diagnosed with a personality disorder, they have to, if they're going to get officially diagnosed, they have to go see generally a psychologist or a psychiatrist, some sort of mental health clinician, right? Men generally do not, kind of socially, they don't tend to say there's a problem in our marriage, we need to go to therapy. Men, by and large, do not do that. Some men do. The vast majority don't, right? They try to deal with it at home, or they're told that women are just difficult, especially if she's beautiful. All beautiful women are crazy. Like, that's kind of this misnomer out there. It's not true, obviously. But so men aren't quick to take their female partner to therapy. So their partner's not getting diagnosed. I think that is a large reason as to why the statistics are something like, 75% of narcissists are men, and only 25% or so are women. From what I see, it's closer to 50-50 from people that are coming to my channel, that are in the support. I mean, there's more and more men that are finding their way here. I think a lot of men, and again, like socially, right? It's this idea that an abusive person is a guy and a victim of abuse is a woman. And so men don't readily identify that they're in an abusive or problematic relationship. It takes them years, if not decades, to see it, because the image that's projected, that's marketed, that's shown through media, through whatever, is that it's generally only like one type of dynamic. And so men don't understand. And so then, they're going to their guy friends, and their guy friends are saying, well, it's just, she's just hormonal, or, they're kind of, again, linking up incorrect cause with incorrect effect. Right. But yeah, there's a lot of problematic people out there. So, but again, like, the cool thing is, once you see it, you see it. Okay, let me scroll down here. Randy said, I can spot female narcissists quicker than male. And it's probably because you're female. I think, because I think a lot of women, highly manipulative women, a big tool in their toolkit is their sexuality. And, you're just, that would be my guess, is that you're able to see their manipulative behavior for what it is. You're not getting overly caught up in their whirlwind that they're trying to create, because if they're trying to seduce you, you're not falling for it. So, but that's cool. That it's really empowering when you can see problematic behavior for what it is. Miss Element says, I'd like to know why, armed with a lot of this info, we keep going back for more. That is a great question. I think a lot of people keep going back for more because, again, they don't link up the correct cause and correct effect. I know from my experience, because I've had a handful of problematic emotional manipulators throughout my life, I did not see a pattern in that for a really long time. I just thought it was all kind of a fluke thing. I didn't realize it. And the thing is, there's just a lot of different dynamics at play. I don't think people often realize that there's a pattern going on. I don't think that they realize that they have certain vulnerabilities that emotional manipulators are able to exploit. So if you don't address those vulnerabilities, then they're going to keep being exploited by emotional manipulators. And there's a lot of them out there. So, I would say if you combine all of the different cluster B personality types, you're really looking at about 7 to 10% of the population, which is quite a lot of people. That's, breaks down to 1 in 10, 1 in 7, about 1 in 10. So, quite a bit. And it takes practice. Because if you have that vulnerability and it's not effectively addressed, then it does take time, right? Because that love bombing can feel so amazing. The rushing of intimacy, it can feel so good. And a lot of us tend to really like that. We like having deep, heavy, intense conversations with people, but slowing things down to make sure that person is who they are claiming to be and getting to know them, that takes time. But a lot of this, because if we've been acting in a certain way for decades, it's going to take some time to undo that and to learn a different way of relating to people. So that's a big part of it too. Mark says, I worry about a poor sex life after the narcissist. I'm not looking forward to that. Well, here's the thing with, I think a lot of people feel that way. Because oftentimes the bonding, the connection they had with this narcissist was amazing, but it's because they were mirroring you. She was extracting everything that you wanted this perfect woman to be, and then she was feeding it back to you. So that connection wasn't real. It was manufactured. But I will tell you, it's very, very rewarding, right? To have this deep, amazing connection with somebody else when it's real, when there's not these highs and lows, when there's not this anxiety and these unpleasant feelings. When you have clarity and you have enjoyment and you have trust and you have all of these pleasant feelings when you're with this person, that is amazing. Because here's the thing too, if you're in a healthy relationship, you're going to have that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication. Good sex requires all of those things to happen. So if you're able to talk to your partner and say, like, this is what I like, and you're able to have these open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented conversations, then you will end up having really great sex and a really great connection with them because of that. It's not going to probably potentially happen right away like it does with a narcissist, because they're not putting on a performance, right? They're like being a real person. But you can still have an amazing connection with somebody. So, yeah, lots of people are headed to bed. Yeah, Mark says he'd rather be with a good person any day of the week. For sure. Ellie says, I just made it out of a bad situation. Thanks for all your informative videos. Officially today, living in a new place. Now the real work starts. That's awesome. I'm so thrilled for you. Yay, you. If you haven't already joined the support group and that's something that you're interested in doing, I believe I have, let me see if it's up there. It might already be up there. Yes, no, maybe so. No, it's not. That's weird. My support group I have one on Facebook. It's called facebook.com/groups/healing after narcissistic abuse. And it's really nice. Even if you're feeling great right now, it can be a great resource to have in place before you need it. So if you're having those low moments, if you're just wanting to discuss, people discuss anything and everything in there, really. I mean, it's not like you don't have to just discuss narcissism. Like we talk about everything in there. So it's a really great group, and it just really helps you to realize that you're not alone, and like that you're not crazy, and you can have just connecting with other people that have been there, done that, is just very, very rewarding. So let me scroll up. Constantino is going to bed, looks like. Good night. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited for you if you're starting your channel. That's awesome. Oh, Namal asked about the series with an attorney. Is this coming through? He has some questions about a restraining order. I had an attorney lined up. That fell through. That series is kind of in a holding pattern. It is something that I would still like to do. I will see about that. I would also, if you're in the support group, asking them as well. Because again, there's a lot of people that have been there, done that. And even though we're not attorneys, it's amazing kind of the input and the feedback that people can give. And it can be helpful for when you do talk to an attorney to have kind of that heads up. T. Bellavi says, I'm so jealous of everyone who can sleep. Yeah, I remember those days. Yeah. JJ Bench asks, did you ever make dark humor jokes? Hold on. This chat does not scroll very well. Marie said, my ex-fiance narcissist said he thought I was going to kill him. I guess he was projecting. Yeah. Seriously. It's scary stuff, but that's exactly how their minds work. Like, if you want to know what's going on with them, pay attention to what you're being accused of, because it's what they're either doing or what they're thinking about. Interesting. JJ Bench says, a question regarding dark humor as a way of our subconscious trying to tell you there's danger. When the sociopath would compliment me, I would laugh and say, wow, are you setting up to kill me from my life insurance? Did you ever make dark humor jokes? I don't remember making dark humor jokes. It's amazing how much I have forgotten, because at the time it wasn't, a lot of things didn't seem significant. They didn't seem significant, right? And then, like, hindsight being what it is, I look back on, it's just like these waves of realizations of, oh my God, like, and you see everything totally different. Like, it's terrifying. So I don't remember if I was using any dark humor, but I will say, in response to that, there's a book again called The Gift of Fear. I've talked about it before. Fantastic book, really, really interesting. Gavin DeBecker is the author. If you go to my website, thriveafterabuse.com, if you look at book club, it's one of the book club books that we read. I have all my notes posted there. You can read through those, and again, like, I take a lot of, it's like 7 to 10 pages of notes, really, really thorough. And one of the signs he said for problematic behavior, to where a person's in danger, is dark humor. And so he was using the example of when people mail bombs, when businesses were getting, people would get a mail bomb, or he gave two examples. One was a mail bomb, and so they'd get the mail, and somebody would look at it and be like, huh, that's weird, that looks like a mail bomb. And somebody else would say, yeah, it sure does. And then they would open it thinking, it can't be a mail bomb, right? Like, that doesn't, because that's how our brain works. Like, it doesn't compute. And so he said that there's a high percentage of time people are opening packages that look problematic, and then they turn out to be problematic. He gave another example of a workplace shooting that this happens a lot of times. People will, he gives this example where there was sounds in the hallway, like the, doon, 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 doon. And one employee looked at the other one and said, hey, I wonder if that's John coming back to get revenge on all of us. And sure enough, like 10 seconds later, John bursts through the door and opens fire. And he talks about this because our brain, it has a hard time linking up that could actually be happening to us. And so he said one of the signs of problematic behavior is dark humor, and to pay attention to that. So if you find yourself using dark humor, it's because your subconscious is picking up on signs that your conscious mind is not aware of. I found that to be absolutely fascinating. It's a huge, huge warning sign. So pay attention to what other people are saying around you, and paying attention to what you're saying yourself, because odds are, again, that's not normal, right? We don't normally say things like that. So it's a good time to take a time out and realize this is a problem. This is a problem. Same thing with confusion, right? Like we talked about earlier. If you're experiencing confusion, you start wondering, is it them? Is it me? We don't normally think that way. That's problematic. It's them. Like, you need to back up and distance yourself. So, because you don't have those feelings around people that you feel comfortable and safe around. Kevin says, I hate going to the doctor because everything always turns out to be stress related rather than an actual illness. So yeah, that is, I was just talking to somebody the other day about how wild it is, how the impacts of stress on our body and how the damage that it can do. I mean, you're talking high blood pressure, any disease or disorder that is related remotely to inflammation. So like fibromyalgia, arthritis, irritable bowel syndrome, lupus, multiple sclerosis, any of these, stress just can cause tremendous amounts of damage. So we might just say like, oh, it's not a real illness, it's just stress. Stress is the problem. Really, I mean, diseases and disorders, those are symptoms of a larger problem. Those are signs that our system is out of alignment. So stress is a huge, huge deal. Thankfully, there's oftentimes a lot of stuff that we can do for stress that's free. But we have to take the stress seriously. And a lot of times we don't. I'm guilty of it too. Because we think, oh, well, it's just stress. So that's somehow normal, and it's not. So trying to stay ahead of that as much as possible. So, there's meditation videos on YouTube. One of my favorite guys, his name is Jason Stevenson on YouTube. He does guided imagery. He does, affirmations. Doing that's something that's free. It's easy. It's very enjoyable. Doing that every night before you go to bed. Taking time to really just take care of yourself, and whatever that might be. And it's the health benefits to just taking care of yourself are huge. So yes, and a lot of people self-medicate when they're experiencing. So I did a video today on the 10, let me see here. Oh, I don't know what I did with it. 10 common emotions that people experience when they're in an abusive relationship. And it's, confusion, depression, anxiety, anger, fear, a lot of these emotions. And so what happens is people then start either self-medicating through alcohol, through prescription medication, through illegal drugs, through shopping, through eating, through all kinds of things. They're numbing out. And because they oftentimes don't realize that they're in a toxic or a dysfunctional situation, whether it's at work or with friends or with their significant other or their parents or what have you. So something's off. Something's out of alignment there if we're having to numb out. Another great book that we also read for book club was Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. I found there was a lot in that book, super, super interesting. She really believes that pretty much every single disease or disorder stems from either a lack of forgiveness or a lack of not loving ourselves. And that's some pretty strong words there. But going through the book, I had to say, I really became a believer by the end of it. I just thought, she is really on to something there. Very powerful stuff. Kevin talks about social isolation as a big stressor. I haven't solved that problem yet. Yeah, meetup.com is fantastic. If you haven't already been on there, I always recommend people join like a dozen or so different groups, even groups that you think you might not even go to you don't even need to go to them on a regular basis, but just to leave your options open in case they have something fun that you want to go do. Namal says he couldn't get into the group. There was some sort of issue. You have to request to be into the group, but it's facebook.com/groups/healing after narcissistic abuse. And I think somebody said you can also search on Facebook for narcissist support, and then that group should also come up, is my guess. So I hope that works. JJ says, I went to a party yesterday and left in tears. But you know what though? Good for you for getting out and trying. It's just gonna take some time. It really is. You will not always feel this way. It really does pass. And it's, if you haven't already gotten into a support group, I highly recommend it. I think a big part of healing, especially that initially, is that validation from other people. I wish I had thought to even look for a support group early on. It didn't even cross my mind that was a thing. I really felt like it was, I'm thinking, well, narcissists are only like 1% of the population. So that's really small. And the odds of me, I just didn't think that many other people were impacted by this. So it didn't even dawn on me that there could be support groups for it or anything else. I didn't connect it. So, had I realized earlier on that I wasn't alone and that I wasn't crazy and being validated, because there's a lot of that initial process where you will most likely find that you're pulling apart different parts of your relationship and you're trying to make sense of everything because you were being lied to, you were being manipulated the whole time, whether or not you were aware of it or not, you were, because that's what narcissists do. So pulling it apart and examining it and then kind of putting it back together and realizing, okay, what I thought happened didn't happen, and here's what really happened. And you're going to just continue to keep doing this with the relationship. That's what one of the benefits of the support group is, because it's people that have been there, done that, and they're going to help you to make sense of what you went through, which is very, very healing. It does really help with your sanity. Kevin says, Meetup is way too terrifying as a possibility for me right now. LOL. It's funny. It's, it's the general public, so it can be weird. I'm not going to lie. I've been to a few groups where I thought, never anything like scary or dangerous, but it was just sort of very clear, like, these are not my people kind of a thing. And then I've gone to other groups where two of my really good friends I've met at a meetup. So you just, it's hit or miss. You have to kind of go just going to want to have a good time. And if you meet somebody, great. Then if you don't, that's great too. Hopefully you're still going to have a good time. 25 cents worth asks, Dana, do you think your parents stifled your ability to trust your judgment in adulthood? That's a really great question and a really big question. Yes, I do. I think in large part, again, this stuff is not taught, right? Like, we don't teach, kids are not taught to listen, to go with their judgment. Like, we're taught to do certain things, right? Like, you go to high school and then you graduate and then you go to college, and and everybody has their own kind of track that they're born, like, whatever, like, whatever is normal for your family, like, that's what you're born into. That's the track that you're on. You're taught not to question it. You're taught, like, this is just what you're going to do, right? Like, you're going to marry a good Catholic Italian boy, or you're going to you're going to become a doctor or you're going to do whatever. Like, this is just, it's expected. This is just what you're going to do. I think all families have that to some extent, and it's not taught to trust your judgment. For me, my father, I think a lot of it's very well intended, but he will pick apart any single thing that you do or idea that you have. And he'll always say like, oh, well, you know what you should do. And then it'll be something totally different. And so I fell into that for a long time. And I did not trust my judgment because I don't think it was malicious on his end. It was just, he's very controlling and it's just kind of micromanaging, So if I wanted to get in, for example, I was in real estate for a short time there, and he would tell me why that's a terrible idea. And the market's the market had just crashed and all of these reasons to not get into real estate. And, or when I wanted to be a teacher, just kind of all of these reasons as to not be a teacher. So it rattled my faith and myself and what I was doing. And yeah, I don't think that he intended for that to kind of undermine my self-confidence, but it definitely did. Now I'm to the point where, well, for sure, like starting this YouTube channel and going through everything that I've gone through with Steve and Jack and everything else, I trust my judgment now, and I don't look outside of myself for validation. It's nice if I get it, but I don't give, I have kind of my core group of people that I really respect their opinion. If they were to say, Dana, this is a terrible idea, or I'm concerned about it, I would listen to them. I'd still make up my own mind at the end. I was not that way, 3 years ago, even. I was still, if any, like I said with Steve, I did not trust, I knew something was off. I listened. I didn't know what to do. I did the best I could at the time, which was to ask other people. And they didn't know him. Like, they didn't have those feelings that something were off like I did. And because I trusted their judgment over mine, it backfired and it didn't work out. And I knew it wasn't going to work out. So, you just have to, learn to trust yourself. It's a process. It's just a process. Dad Surviving Divorce says, sometimes I think dads are programmed to be like that. I know I make a conscious effort to not do that with my kids. Yeah. My dad, he's a retired architect. So in part, I think a lot of it too with him was, he had to be very precise, and he had to look for kind of why things wouldn't work. That's just kind of the way his brain works. But that's the thing. There's unintended consequences, I think, to everything that we do. And so, we have to just kind of stay open to our approach and look at the results that we're getting. So guys, well, I think we're going to call it a night. It's getting late, and thank you so much. Oh, wait, one last question. It's a good one. Marie asks, Dana, I'm wondering about your recovery. Do you think that you are fully healed? Yeah, I do. I think that I feel like I'm beyond healed, frankly. Here's the thing with healing. Let me get some tea. Hold on a second here. With my giant cup. I think this is really important. And this is something I need to do a video on. After my relationship with Jack, I really thought that healing from that meant not feeling awful. My heart was broken. My faith in humanity was destroyed. I was paranoid. My self-esteem was in the toilet. I developed like this weird kind of body dysmorphia thing. And because I internalized his behavior. When I found out he was living a double life, I didn't know why. And so at the tail end, he'd made just a couple of comments. How could I blame him? Basically saying that I was hideous and that you know, I was so awful that it drove him away. And of course, I didn't at that time, I didn't know the full extent of it. But just those few, it just, nothing made sense. And I was a mess. I was a mess for a while after that relationship. So when I began to feel back to normal, when I quit feeling paranoid, when I began being okay, leaving the house and not feeling depressed or anxious, I thought that was healing. And in part it was, right? But it was only part of it. The part that I was missing was learning about problematic behavior. It was learning the right lessons, learning all of the right lessons. It wasn't just feeling better emotionally. And that's because I didn't learn what problematic behavior looked like until after Steve, because I thought me getting tangled up with Jack, I just thought that was a fluke. I didn't think it would ever happen again. And again, like, I didn't learn a lot of the right lessons. My brain was linking up all kinds of things, right? It was the whole, because he was European. So in my mind, it was like, well, I better stay away from European men. And, I better stay away from older men. And it was not linking. I was not learning the right lessons, even though I thought I was. And so truly, truly healing from this, there's that emotional component where you heal emotionally, but the other part of that is healing those unaddressed wounds, those unaddressed childhood wounds, which are the empty buckets, which are our vulnerabilities. Once you learn to identify your vulnerabilities and you heal those, and it's that going back and figuring out which empty buckets you need to address. It's also learning to trust your judgment. It's learning to trust your basic human instincts. Again, the stuff is not taught. That's the lesson in all of this. And so that's where that's the full picture of healing. It's not just feeling better. So it took me getting tangled up with Steve. And even then, I knew at that point, this cannot be a coincidence. This is 2 relationships in 5 years. What's going on here? And then getting tangled up down the road, but only for like a month, with this other guy who had a bunch of problematic behavior, and thinking to myself, like, again, like, what is going on here? Like, what is going on? And then, the pieces began coming into focus. And really, I think really what the big aha moment was for me, because I was scrambling around. I had started my blog, and I was writing about the red flags that I was seeing, the problematic behavior that I was seeing within this one guy, and found my way into a support group. And it was there because we're all telling different versions of the same story, right? You get into a support group and you hear from like 1,000 other people elements of their story, and it's mind-boggling. It's mind-blowing, because you're like, oh my God, that's what I went through, or that's close to what I went through, or you see it. And then I couldn't deny it. Then it became very, very clear. Like, these are the signs. This is what I was missing. So okay. Hold on. Where was I? There was this chat. Where does there's a little scroll bar thing for the chat, and it just, I don't know why. Like, oh, there it is. Okay. You're welcome, Mark. Mark says, thank you for all you've done. It feels like you're directly talking about my ex with me at a coffee house. Yeah, you're so not alone in this. And it does help. It does help to just to be able to talk about this, because if a person hasn't gone through it, they don't know, right? And that's a very isolating feeling too, feeling like nobody gets it. Nature says, I don't feel like I can go out at all. I'm isolated, and he turned everyone against me. He is so charming and clever. He put me on some sort of list and have people targeting me. What do you do? So what you're describing is called a smear campaign, and this is part of what they do. And it's, and I'm so sorry that you're going through this. It's just, it adds like insult to injury, right? So you're probably being accused of a lot of the stuff that he did to you, because that's what they do. Like they try to break down their target. It's just crazy making. I would encourage you to get into a support group. If you go to Facebook, you can find mine. If you do a search for narcissist support, my group should come up. It's a how to effectively handle a smear campaign is a big answer. It's a big question. It really depends on exactly kind of what you're going through. I think a big part of it is to try to not get ruffled by it. It's way easier said than done, but he's telling people lies about you, and he's being very convincing about it. And so all you can do is to tell people, if they ask you about it, or if you even if you know these people to some extent, just let them know, like, you don't know my side of the story. And because your true friends, people that really do know you, are going to listen to what you have to say. Other people won't. So, if you feel like you're in danger, if they're like targeting you physically, then, do whatever you need to do by any means necessary to stay safe. And some people, the smear campaign, it can get bad to where they have to quit their job, where they have to move, these kinds of things, because it's called also abuse by proxy. So they get other people they're called flying monkeys, or they get them riled up to where they tell them all kinds of horrible, hateful things about their former partner, and then they go on the attack. And those attacks can be really, really vicious. But I would encourage you to get into a support group, because it is something that can really wear a person out. Miss Sammy says, been married for 17 years, separated 5 weeks, and he is tagging another woman at events while still having photos of us together. How do I handle this? I think you feel the way that you feel about it, which is probably really incredibly hurt. And you realize that this is not a coincidence, right? Like, this is in part designed to make you feel this way. And to try to not have any reaction about it, because his behavior defines him. It does not define you, right? Healthy, normal, considerate even people do not do those things. Like, only jerks do those things. It's just really insensitive, and healthy people realize that. So I would say, if you can block him across I don't know if you guys have minor children together, or if you can officially go no contact. If you can go no contact and that feels like a good idea for you, then distance yourself as much as possible from him, from the situation. Block him on social media at a minimum, to where you don't have to see that. And, just a support group really helps to deal with all of the anger and the hurt and the rage and the pain and the whole mix of emotions that come up with stuff like that. Constantino says, my empath healing powers are getting stronger listening to you, Dana. Good. I'm glad. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I really think this is a big reason that it's weird. Like, I think from like a universal perspective, how I was saying earlier, that things all have a gift in them. It's not a coincidence. Like, just like the narcissists and emotional manipulators have a lot of the same behavior, so do us, right? Like, we all tend to be very empathic and compassionate and considerate and good people. And in a way, it's kind of cool that we've all met, and we might not have met under any different circumstances. And pain really does bond people. So in a weird, I mean, this is kind of off topic, but like in a big picture kind of way, it's interesting to think about that these relationships are so intensely painful that people put aside all differences. That all of a sudden, it doesn't matter. If you look around, it doesn't matter we have Christians, we have Muslims, we have Jewish people, we have Hindi, we have Buddhists, we have, you name it. We have people that are all ages. We have people that are all nationalities. We have people all income levels, all education levels. Like, this is the great bonding experience. Like, this pain is so great that it bonds people together, and it bonds a lot of empathic people together, which I think it'll be interesting to see kind of if there's a greater, I don't know if we'll ever see it in our lifetime, but a greater purpose for this. I don't know. It's very interesting. Yes. Great point. Goofy Fur says, there's that anger still, and you want them to suffer and understand what they are and what they've done, but what's the point? Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's screaming into the wind because they don't think they have a problem and they don't care. And they cause pain. Like, that's what they do. But we can take that pain that they've caused and we can use it we can squeeze out as much as we possibly can from it. And there's a lot that can be learned from this. Like, the personal growth that can come from this can be tremendous. And I know that that's not to minimize anybody's experience or anything. It's just these experiences, they are what they are. And so we're here. And all we can do, I really do feel like the key to healing is to turn our pain into some sort of purpose, to make it work for us. And if we can take that pain and make us bond to other people, if we can examine our own vulnerabilities, if we can learn to trust our basic human instincts, if we can learn to fine-tune our empathic abilities, then that's huge. That's huge. Oh, yeah. Elise says, I see so many women who want to get their narcissist to understand what they did to end the relationship. It seems to be a natural draw around these folks. Oh, totally. You know what? It makes sense, right? Like, it's crazy making when somebody blames you for everything, and you're like, it's almost like you need that for your sanity to be like, no, like, this is why things ended. Like, you're lying, cheating, stealing, manipulating, gaslighting. You have a ton of problematic behavior. Like, own it. Like, this is why it ended, especially if they're flipping things around and they're accusing you of lying, cheating, stealing, manipulating, gaslighting. It's almost like you need them to validate your reality is what it is. And of course that keeps people, I mean, myself included. Like I said, I've had a couple other problematic relationships before I really got this ironed out that thankfully didn't last years. They lasted like a month, and then I was able to get out. but it's hard to walk away from crazy making behavior because it's like you want to prove that it's that your reality is not the problem. And it's hard to just throw your hands up and just walk away. It is. So yeah. Huh. Lisa says, narcs, they keep winning like Charlie Sheen. Yep. Crazy, crazy, crazy behavior. Frustratingly, lack of accountability, crazy. You know, and the only thing is all you can do is just tell yourself, like, it's, again, like having confidence and faith in yourself to trust your judgment, to trust your reality, to trust your perception and your assessment of a situation and of another person. Ambi Nicole says, 5 years later, I still feel the same way. Will I ever stop wanting him to feel remorse? Yeah, I think a lot of it's just normal, you know? I think you'll stop wanting him to feel remorse when you accept what he is and that this behavior is what they do. Because I think once you accept that he is an emotional manipulator, you're going to put aside all these ideas of, you know, sincerity, of an apology, of remorse, of any of these things. It's sort of like if a person's in denial that a loved one has Alzheimer's, right? And we're like, well, we're treating them like they don't have Alzheimer's. We're treating them like they are totally lucid and, you know, and we're getting upset when they leave the stove on, and we're getting upset when they don't remember our names, and we're in denial of what's going on. People get very frustrated when they have a loved one that has Alzheimer's because they don't understand, right? They don't understand, like, this person just went to the bathroom in the closet instead of going into the bathroom, right? And they're taking a lot of this behavior personally. It's not personal. They have Alzheimer's. This is what Alzheimer's does, right? A lot of it's kind of the same thing with personality disorders. Narcissists and other emotional manipulators, they use people. They're parasitic. It's what they do. They go from person to person to person. It's their personality. It's their character. It's the way they're wired. And once we can accept that, not saying that it's okay, right? Not accepting it like, oh, this is okay with me. Accepting it as it is what it is. And this is how they're wired. This is not personal, even though it feels incredibly personal because, you know, they we're working towards destroying you. This is what they do. And they move on to the next person and the next person and the next person. It's like, that's the way they're wired. And they manage to appear normal, warm, and caring to everyone else because it's all part of it. So they tend to target generally those closest to them, right? Because they can extract, you know, maximum supply from their children, from their significant others. But people that have known them, like their parents, people that have known them for any length of time, generally know that they have a personality disorder. Like, they generally are not able to hide that from people that have known them for any length of time. And my guess is if you were to talk to any of his exes, they would say the same thing. If they dated this guy for any length of time, they would probably say the same thing. And they probably feel the exact same way. It's all an act. Everything they do is an act. If they're, like you said, normal, warm, and caring, that's an act. And they're setting somebody up for the next fall. And it's what they do. It's just what they do. They're sick. They're sick individuals with personality disorders, and they're just twisted. There's something wrong with them, and you got tangled up with one, and I know it feels so personal, but it's what they do. It's what they do. Getting into a support group and fully realizing that really does help. You can find support groups on Facebook. You can do a Google search for them as well. T. Bellavie said, "Oh my God, it just clicked. He didn't even go to his own brother's wedding. Who does that?" Mr. Law says, according to this doctor who treats PTSD, his name's Van Bessel, I believe, wrote a book on how the body keeps score. Yes, I just recently heard about that book. I recently bought it, actually. It's on my Kindle. It's in line for me to read. And yeah, it is very interesting. If I remember correctly, it's sort of like how emotional pain manifests within our body, how our body stores emotional trauma. So, yes, Elise says, that's what hurts the most is when they're so nice to everyone else and all the other women think he's so sweet, caring, and thoughtful. Yes, and it's crazy making too, because then they're cool, calm, and collected. They're Prince Charming. And of course, they've been pushing their target over the edge, right? And so now their target becomes totally unhinged because here they've been provoking these emotions, then they've been denying it, then they've been spinning it back around and then blaming them. And that'll push any sane person over the edge because it's a highly emotional and it's crazy making. But to the outside world, they think, oh, this person has to deal with this poor person who's so good and kind and caring, has to deal with this partner who's completely insane and totally unhinged. And that's all set up. Like they push them to evoke a reaction. Then when they do get a reaction, they're getting it through text messages or the person's causing a scene. Then they can go around and be like, see, look at how crazy she really is. Do you see what she just did? And then everybody can say, oh, you poor man, or you poor woman. I can't believe you had to put up with that. So it's all manufactured. Again, the book Psychopath Free does a fantastic job of spelling out that dynamic and showing how that works. It's like, highly recommend it. Super spot on. And the emotions, like what they go through and then what the target goes through as well. Like it makes so much sense when you read that book. So Miss Sammy says, I cannot afford therapy. You and Richard have helped me a lot. He cut me off in financing in only a week, and I have been a stay-at-home mom for years. Yeah, I'm so sorry that you're going through this, and you're so not alone. And if you haven't already gotten into a support group, highly recommend it. Most of mine is free. Most of them are free. There's a lot of them on Facebook. You can, or do a Google search for them as well. Highly recommend it. A lot of domestic violence shelters as well offer therapy on either free therapy or sliding scale. So just kind of something to keep in mind as well. And yeah, I would talk to people in a support group about that because you're not alone. This is what they do. Abusive people are all about maintaining power and control. It's all about winning for them. It's not about what's fair. It's not about what's right. It's not even about what's legal. Like it's just about them maintaining power and control. And finances is a big way that they do that. Kevin asks, is that a train? Yes. Yes, it is. It's funny because I live here, so I've gotten used to hearing it, but yes. Okay. Miss Sammy says, thank you. I am trying to get free or low cost therapy. That's great. And books. There's the more you can educate yourself about narcissism and emotional manipulators, the more healing I think it'll really do. Lisa says, I've been reading about Buddhism lately. They have a supernatural thing called Pretas, or hungry ghosts, that describes my ex for sure. Yeah. Yep. I would, I never connected that before, but you're totally right. Because the hungry ghost concepts is all about kind of this craving, this like unbridled wanting, that it's ego based, right? It's how the ego is trying to create itself and protect itself, is through external things like a car or a house or a spouse or a brand names or a job or these things. But that's not who we are. Like exist beneath that. But to the ego, there is no self, there is only ego, and there is all of the stuff around us is us, but it's an illusion. Like, that's not who we are. So and Miss Sammy, I have a book club as well. I always post my notes for the books, and there's about 10 pages of notes on each book. So if you go to my website, thriveafterabuse.com, you can see there's a tab on there for book club, and you can read all of the notes from the different books. So, and the plan is for me to start doing videos on kind of my top, I don't know, 5 or 7 takeaways from each book. That way people that don't have the time or that can't afford to get the books, or they can't get them in the library or whatever, they can watch the videos and then kind of get an overview of the main takeaways of the books. Because there's so many good books out there that have so much great information in them. So Honeybee Blossom says, thanks, Dana. I love your videos and they help so much. That's awesome. I'm glad. In my recent experience, I found out about the narc's strange sexual perversions. I would love to know from others what they experienced. That was very disturbing. I did a video on this, actually. It's one of the red flags fairly early on. It's very, very common that they have a lot of sexual perversions, and not even perversions, but it can go as far as, sexual criminal behavior. So like rape, incest, these kinds of things. There's no morality is really, I guess, what it boils down to. There's no sense of connection to other people. They use other people, and it's all about them. And it's that way with them sexually and emotionally and financially and you name it, So Doug asks, Dana, are you getting tired? I love these streams, but I don't want you to burn yourself out. I do need to get to bed. It has been a long day. And yeah, so with that said, I do think I need to sign off because it's almost midnight here in my time. But thank you guys again for fantastic questions and for supporting each other and everything. I just really appreciate it. If you want to continue this conversation, I believe you guys can stay on the chat and chat as much as you want. Or if you want to join the support group, it's on Facebook. You can do a search for narcissism or narcissist support, and you should find my support group there. It's also facebook.com/groups/healing after narcissistic abuse. So that's it, guys. Have a great week, and I will see you next week, Wednesday nights, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay? So lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.